everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Tetracast. This is RPG Site's weekly podcast where we get the site staff together to talk about our favorite genre of video games. I'm your host. My name is Brian Vitale. I've got the usual crew with me here today. Joining me, I have Josh Torres.
Happy 420, even though this episode's not coming out on 420.
We are recording this on 420. We have Adam Vitale.
Hello.
James Galizio.
Hey, folks.
And Chao Min Wu.
How's it going?
We are in the back half of April, like the back last third of April, and games are coming out. And we're going to be talking about a lot of them today, at least starting out. So the big topic today that we're going to go into a very deep discussion on is one of our most anticipated games of the year. And that is, of course, Eiyuden Chronicle 100 Heroes. So this game we have talked about in several different contexts on the site over the last couple of years, ever since its announcement and its Kickstarter campaign back in, what was that, 2020?
Yep.
2020. Of course, we already have covered the prequel initial game, Eiyuden Chronicle Rising. Of course, this is a spiritual successor from the creator that brought the Suikoden series, etc. There's a lot to go into here, so I won't preamble all of it. We've had several people on staff that have had access to the game, both through press and through backing, depending on the person. And this game is coming out within the next couple of days. Some people who have backed it or have been able to find shops that have broken release street date have already been able to play it. So we're going to be talking about it here. I'm going to be delegating a good chunk of this discussion to both Adam and Josh, who are both, to my understanding, very big Suikoden fans, have had this game kind of circled on their calendar ever since it was crowdfunded years ago, and finally had a chance to go through and play it. And I've also been in the middle of playing it as well. And I'm going to be the normie input where I do not have the Suikoden history, so I'll chime in when I can. And then I don't know if James and Chao have circled this as well, but there's a lot of games coming out, so we'll be talking about more than just Eiyuden today. But this is what we're going to be starting out with. And I will hand it off to Eeny, Meeny, Miny, Mo. I'll hand it off to Adam to talk about Eiyuden Chronicle 100 Heroes, our thoughts on it. We're not going to spoil anything here, obviously, because a lot of people are just going hands-on, but we're going to just discuss it at length.
I guess before we get into it, like just a bit of a programming note, as you noticed, this episode might have released a day after, and that's because the review embargo for Eiyuden Chronicle lifted on Sunday, not Saturday, and we were like, well, we should probably squeeze in this game instead of waiting the whole week to talk about it again.
And yes, we know that's a little bit ridiculous when people have been talking about this game publicly for the past almost week, because people have been getting their copies in. That's not on us. It's just the way the embargo worked.
Yep. It's just the realities of being a Kickstarter game and backers getting early access, I guess. So we record this on Saturday, 420. We're releasing this on 421. By the time you are listening to this, you can read my review on the website on rpgsite.net. As of right now, as of me speaking, I have not written it yet. So you know because
you've stated it now.
Yeah, you know what I've. The review is tomorrow. The embargo is tomorrow, so I have to get it finished. But you'll know what my score is. I don't know what my score is yet. Actually, I have a good idea. But anyways, so I've completed the game. Josh has completed the game, and Brian has a backer copy, so he's a couple hours starting into it now. So where to start? So I have played all the Suikoden games except the PSP one, the Japanese only one. I own it, haven't played it, but I played them all, so I'm a fan. And so this is definitely something I was interested in playing. I backed it. So here's what I want to start with. Before this game released, I was maybe slightly concerned that this is going to be it's just a rehash of Suikoden again, like Suikoden 2 specifically, because based on trailers, it seemed like it had a similar character dynamic. I was maybe slightly concerned that it was just going to be the creator is just revisiting an old haunt and this is just Suikoden again. It kind of feels like Suikoden at home maybe, or whatever, or maybe a kind of a short half finished version or something, maybe a Kickstarter game, maybe not fully fledged. But honestly, none of that is true. This game feels like its own thing. It's really a fully fledged game. This game is thorough. There's a lot of game there. It's a pretty long game too.
Mm-hmm.
I think I think they said it was around 40 to 60 hours is their estimate, and doing all the side stuff for it and playing it for review, I have eclipsed 60 hours. So it's a pretty long game. It's actually longer than a lot of Suikoden's. And I will also just say, we're not going to spoil anything directly here, but it's definitely not just Suikoden 2 again. The character dynamics sort of like lean in that direction early on between Noah and Sane. That's kind of what the trailers are sort of hinting at, two characters on different sides of a war, which is similar to Suikoden 2, but it kind of diverges from that pretty quickly. It's its own thing. So my worst concerns were assuaged. So
is there a Nanami equivalent in this game?
It's not really. You have Leon, who is sort of like she is your superior officer. That's her gimmick anyway. She's kind of like she's kind of like your pal that sticks around throughout the whole game. But no Nanami. Your main character talks in pretty much every Suikoden game, I think, except for like the DS one. Usually the main character doesn't talk. So Noah does speak. Really, it is Noah is the main character, and Sane, who is sort of like a secondary character, and Marissa, who comes in a little bit later in the story. They're also main characters, but Noah is really like the central character of the game. And so things that are very similar, that basically are emblematic of the Suikoden series that this game represents, is you have more than 100 characters that you can recruit. So as you play through this game, right away, in your first starting town, you're going to recruit like 4 characters, or maybe more. And then at a pretty regular pace as you play the game, you're going to be running into a bunch of characters that you can recruit to your team. Oftentimes they have a little bit of maybe like a mini quest you need to do, or go to a certain place to do a little quest, or maybe you have to do a certain dialogue sequence to get someone to join properly or what have you. But this game is throwing characters at you all the time, which is true to Suikoden. And they all have they all have cool designs. I really love this game's sprite work. We don't really get sprite games like this anymore. I want to emphasize that it's not like the HD 2D style, which I like, but this is kind of its own style.
It's very emblematic of like PS1 era Suikoden games where the sprites are very small and like to realistic proportions. They're not chibi. It's not like a big head, small body. It's like they're very like, just like the original Suikoden game, very tall. It's something that you didn't see much back then. And like when you saw Suikoden, it's like, whoa, these sprites are like actually kind of they look like real people.
It's not like classic Final Fantasy.
Yeah, exactly.
Where they're
I agree with you. Yeah, it follows that that legacy, that style, and I really love it too. I love the way that like the sprites just animate when you're moving, and you see like the wind. They simulate like wind and cloth physics through the sprite work.
One of the earliest characters you get in the game is Mio, who is like a female like samurai sort of character, and she has really long hair and sort of a samurai cloak sort of thing, and both her hair and her clothes will like animate in battle as if it's swaying in the wind. One of the earliest characters you get is Yusuke, and he's a really fun character. He's really good too, and he's kind of like that Japanese delinquent bancho type, and he's got his little like trench coat sort of thing that kind of sways in the wind. Mm-hmm. Yusuke is cool because he never takes his hands out of his pockets ever.
That's true. Absolutely.
Does it have a tattoo on the back of his trench coat?
I think he has his trench coat has like some sort of rune symbol design kind of deal. But yeah, anyways, my point about characters is that this is the Suikoden games. This game is structured very similarly in combat, where you have a 6-person party, a row of 3 in the front and a row of 3 in the back. I won't get too deep into the details, but you basically have to deal with some characters can attack at short range, some at long range, some at both ranges. There's combination attacks that you can do between certain characters. Some characters have magic abilities, and the thing is that this is the sort of game where you're going to be adjusting your party pretty frequently. You don't like have to, but you're getting new characters all the time. And that's one of the fun things about these sorts of games is kind of mix and matching, choosing what characters you like, your party combinations and things like that, because they're all just a little bit different. I won't claim to say that like this game is like super balanced and like every character has the same utility, because it's probably not true, but it's just fun to like get all these new characters and see what they can do in battle and how they work together. and you'll be constantly changing out your parties and messing around with what they can do in battle, and that's really cool. I guess,
and also like a fun thing about like the 6-person parties, like it's not always safe because there's gonna be some characters that are so large that take up 2 slots.
Oh yeah.
In battle too, and that's like a fun mix up of the format. It's like, okay, like what do they have that like really justifies that 2 slot, and it's all up to you. Like there's no like right or wrong way to play the game. It's kind of all up to like your certain play style. Like me and Adam probably had very very different parties. Though I did tell him Yusuke's really cool, and he's like, okay. And
yeah, Yusuke's great.
Did you guys like prioritize on getting people to have a lot of rune slots or something like that?
The thing is with runes is each character. Okay, I don't want to get too deep into the mechanics because that can be a little boring. But it's like you'll get it as you play it more. But anyways, each character has like up to 6 rune slots. But the thing is starting out, you only have like 1 or 2. And sometimes a rune slot is like set for a character. Like Mio's first slot, I believe, is like an SP attack sort of slot. And but some slots can be interchanged. So early on, you're not really messing with runes too much, just a little bit, because most characters have like a set rune, which is basically like a set ability. But then later on, once you unlock more rune slots, because they literally unlock as you gain like a certain level. Like quite literally, I think one of Noah's unlocks at level like 40, 50, and 60 or whatever. And then once you get later in the game and you have more runes and more characters, you might start messing around a little bit. Like for example, one of the runes I used on Leon. Leon is like a martial artist, and I gave her a rune that basically, I think what it was it raised her attack by 50%, but lowered her defense by 50%. So she's already kind of glass cannon-ish. So I was just like, okay, now she's even more glass cannon-ish. She packs a punch, but she'll die in 1 hit.
And the thing about like your rune slots aren't like the be all end all for your character necessarily, but you can like see at a distance, like once you start playing the game, people will recognize, hey, there are certain symbols for rune slots, so I can get a better idea of like how this character will develop as I level them up. Now, I might say it's like Adam was saying, is it completely balanced? It's like, no, there's definitely probably losers or winners in that roster where like some characters are just like straight up better than other characters. But that's it's not like necessarily like if you play with this character, you're doing it wrong or you're losing. It's like that's never the case in this game.
No,
you can do whatever the fuck you want in this game when it comes to like partner compositions.
And it's also all I was going to say was the difficulty in the game is not a hard game. And this is actually something worth mentioning. So when you start this game, you can choose to play on hard mode or normal mode. And I wish this wasn't the case, but hard mode is actually like a mode you have to like opt into. You have to choose hard mode at the start.
Yeah.
And if you ever drop down from hard to normal, you can't go back up to hard. It's that sort of deal.
Yeah.
I kind of wish that wasn't the case because I ended up just playing the game on normal. For review purposes, I wanted to see like what's the normal experience, and I can tell you it's not that hard. It's actually a pretty easy game, which I mean, it's not like Suikoden games were known for their difficulty, really. Maybe it was outside of like some infamous boss fights, but I wish there was a toggle that you could choose between hard and normal whenever you want, but you can't. But also there are like modifiers that are similar. These are most similar to like Dragon Quest XI, if you played that, where there will be like a modifier for enemies do more damage, or there's a modifier for like shop prices are higher, or I forget some of the other ones off the top of my head.
Money never drops or something.
Oh yeah, sorry. I started up the game like 80 hours ago. I don't remember what the modifiers were.
Yeah.
But it's a sort of thing where those also you have to like opt into them, and then if you ever turn them off, you can't turn them back on. I'm kind of fine with that, but I still wish there was just like a toggle, just like hard mode, normal mode. You can change at any time. Why not? But that you can't. This game has a lot of dialogue and a lot of voice acting, and I would say the voice acting is more good than bad. But with so many characters, I think it was kind of inevitable that there were some that are kind of stinkers, but. One thing I want to praise, I think the dialogue is actually really well written. I can't claim to say like how faithful it is the original Japanese dialogue or whatever, but I was also maybe concerned that this game wouldn't get like a thorough translation or localization, that it would maybe just be something really done very basically or very cheap or whatever, but they actually have some pretty veteran localizers and translators on this game. They have Brian Gray, who's done a bunch of stuff for Square Enix for like decades. Alan Alvarell, who's done stuff for Nintendo and 8.4 and other places for also like decades. So my point is that they have some like experienced people translating this game, and there was never really once a moment playing this game where I thought like, oh, that line was kind of like stiff in terms of like the writing, or kind of, you know, didn't sound maybe fully English or whatever. Like, I think it's actually pretty well done, which if you played Suikoden too, you couldn't say that for some of the earlier Suikoden games. Those translations are not that great, to be honest.
That was one of the main topics when Konami unveiled the Konami Suikoden 1 and 2 HD remasters. Like, okay, are they getting new translation or localization passes? Because everyone who played them remembers that, like, hey, they didn't have like the most smooth script. English script.
And actually, what's actually sort of funny is his name is escaping me right now, but the main translator for Suikoden 2, what's his name? Shoot.
Oh man, I don't remember.
That's way too long.
Yeah, but go for it.
Anyways, his new company is Dragon Baby. That's the name of the company, and they also contributed to this localization, which is sort of like a fun full circle moment where like this guy, what's his name? Shoot. I'm looking this up right now. He worked on Suikoden 2, you know, decades ago. Always kind of wished he could do better, because just the pipeline of translation back then wasn't as good. But like kind of being able to come back to the series in a sense. I know it's not really Suikoden, but it's cool. Anyways,
yeah, and to bounce off your point, that like I was really like thrown off guard of how much voice acting there is. Like you would think like. There's just something
Jeremy
about
Blaustein.
Yeah, Jeremy Blaustein.
Okay.
That's who it is.
Thank you. Yeah, but just like when how do I best put this? When people talk about FF7 Rebirth feeling like a PS1 JRPG because of like how much mini games there were, just kind of like that classic formula of like going around the world and just having a variety of stuff. It's like, okay, I can kind of see where they're coming from. It's a very enjoyable game, and I enjoyed Rebirth. But like going to Eiyuden, it's like feels like a PS1 RPG that like kind of drifted through time. So like when I was playing through it, I kind of had like, weirdly enough, I had like that expectation of like I'm gonna treat it like a PS1 RPG. But you know, obviously, PS1 RPGs back then didn't have much voice acting because of technological limitations. But this game, like, just even like some like one-off lines with very specific conditions will be voice acted. Even like characters who you bring along with you, just like totally randomly, who may not be like relevant in what's going on in the scene. Some of them will still have like chime in on the conversation here and there, and they'll be voice acted. And it's like, oh, that's great.
One thing there's also a lot of like small little voice lines. Didn't have to be there, but there are. Like, for example, whenever you switch characters in and out of the party, they'll sometimes make a comment about like either like who's in the party that they're joining, or maybe like who's swapping out for them. And it's not always characters that like really would ever interact with each other, because there's like more than 100. And so like you might have like a character Mellower like be swapped out of the party for I don't know, Wyver, and they'll just make a comment like, go get him, Wyver. It's a voice line, like a little quick line, and it's like, oh, they didn't have to voice these small little quips between all these different characters, but they do. They didn't have to.
Yeah, I mean, it just I don't know. It's just something really charming about that, and to like go like expand that thought more. Like, this feels like a PS1 RPG. Like, this has like full on random encounters. You know, it's not like Rebirth where it's like, oh, you can see the enemy on the field and you can go attack them. It's like, hey, you're running around and then boom, you're in it. It's all like you have to get kind of used to the sound effect of a random encounter because it sounds like a jump scare when you first hear it. It's like, oh, it's like a very sharp noise at first. Okay, so this is what the random encounter noise sounds like. And also, like, much like in FF6, the default run speed in this game is like, it's pretty slow. Like, you'll be kind of, I think a lot of people will be thrown off like, man, my character runs really slow. Is there any button to run faster? And there's not. There's only a button to go slower, which is to walk, and you never use that really. So, and then like, and spaces in this game, like sometimes dungeons or like towns, they're like pretty expansive, so getting around them feels pretty sluggish at first. And it's not until like shortly later to the game, you'll get like an accessory like the dash boots to go a little bit faster, and then later on in the game you'll have another resource that you can obtain to like make that travel speed even a little faster. So it's just one of those like it's a mechanic from a bygone era essentially, right? Where RPGs games really don't do this anymore. It's like it's deliberately done by design, and it's a very take it or leave it type of design. They were very firm in their design philosophies, and you can feel like Murayama's intent in a lot of the design work in this game. Whether you think it's a good or bad thing in a modern setting, that wasn't really the concern for the development team, and it shows in this game. It's like, hey, this is what our fans want. This is what we want. We are going to design it in a deliberate way like this.
Yeah. So I have two comments on that. Mm-hmm. One, when we got these codes for review, they were actually basically said like kind of outright, and this is like the PR giving us review codes to us, basically saying this game is very much intentionally meant to evoke a JRPG from a bygone era, like a PlayStation 1 or early PlayStation 2 era JRPG. Like they're kind of like setting the table for us. Like this is not trying to be, modern in a way. I mean, obviously there are some modern conveniences and such, but there are certain points to the game that's like we're trying to have a feel like an earlier game, and it does. And some of that's even harder to quantify exactly what we mean by that. Mm-hmm. And the other thing I wanted to say is my overall takeaway for this game is that I cannot overstate how glad I am that it exists, because it didn't have to. Most games are greenlit by some company to fill a spot on some fiscal year and like plan for like how much revenue is this going to bring in. This is part of our portfolio. Obviously, the creatives behind all these games that we love, have all the creativity and everything they love about games they want to incorporate in the games they make. But this game didn't have like a company backing it, at least at first. It was quite literally just Murayama, other creators like Junko, was it Kwano, yes, from the original games, and other creators just basically came together 4 or 5 years ago and said, we want to make another game and let's just put it out on Kickstarter. And this is kind of the first game of this type to be put on Kickstarter. And it was a huge success. It was the most funded game of that year. And we've now seen follow-ups to that with like the Wild Arms-ish one, which is Arm Fantasia, and the Shadow Hearts one, which is Penny Blood, which are kind of in like a similar vein because they saw how well Eiyuden did. And basically they just came together and just said, let's just do it. Let's just say we want to make this game and see if people want to play this game. And the answer was a resounding yes. People wanted to play it. And I think that was really evident when you get to the credits of this game and you see like the backer list, and it just goes on and on and on and on. And you see all these people who backed this game, who wanted to play it. I'm going to guess most of them had like fondness towards the series. And eventually, like 505 Games picked up the publishing rights for it. So it's like going to be in their business portfolio or whatever. But this game just came out of this genuine desire for creators who wanted to make it and players who wanted to play it. So that's kind of like my main takeaway, is that I'm really, really glad it exists. Now,
yeah, and it feels super fully featured. It's not like every aspect of the game is going to be a masterpiece. Like, for example, like the war mode in this game. I'm not a fan of the war mode. It's serviceable, not great. It's basically the classic like Suikoden callback of like it's an overhead map and you're moving in between like grids with your army to interact with the enemy. It's a fairly simple mode, but it's slow for me, and that's fine. But other stuff like the town building in this game is like really, really fun and expansive and big. It's a long-term project in this game, and it's fun to see your town grow genuinely with like all these like crazy functions and mini games and stuff, and you're recruiting people to unlock more stuff for it, and you see that like the expansiveness of the town building. You kind of get the sense that like this wouldn't have been possible if so many people didn't donate to this project and crowdfund it, because there's so many ways to like there's little touch-ups, like you can have like different sort of lights or statues to dress up that your town, and like it's like some of those touches that like you don't it definitely wouldn't have been as expansive as if it wasn't Kickstarted, which is like it was like made on a more traditional level. So, and
Now,
I think that's really cool.
now we're not going to really spoil the game, although people
Yeah.
listening to this are probably several hours into it. But one thing I do want to say is I think this is kind of a common thought between me, you, and another writer for our site, Quentin, who all got early access to the game, where none of us disliked the early act of the game, but the early parts of this game are a little bit slower. It kind of really takes its time in setting up everything in terms of like who the characters are and what they're doing. You go on some like kind of what's the word, boilerplate open story quests in terms of like how like things are opening up to you and revealing the world and the characters and the conflict and whatnot, and it's all just fine. And I think all of us kind of felt that early on, like, but maybe like 5 hours in, let's just say roughly, that's when things like really start to get going and like really start to latch on and like, okay, things are happening, this is kind of interesting, and really kind of getting into the swing of the game. It takes you several hours to even get to the town building, so not just from a story perspective, but from like actual like game loop perspective. And to be honest, none of this should be surprising if you played Suikoden games, because some of them also kind of feel like this, specifically Suikoden 5, where it just takes its time going on. So I guess my point is this, is that like you kind of have to like allow the game to kind of build into itself as you play it. It's just that's the kind of structure they went for and that they have. So if you're listening to this podcast, you might have started the game. That's just kind of the experience that several of us had, is, you know, it does take a while for things to kind of really start to click together, both from a narrative and a mechanical perspective.
I think that's like the difficult part, because people say, "Hey, do I need to have like the Suikoden games if I'm gonna will that determine if I like this game?" You know, because we can't expect a lot of the modern audience to have played a Suikoden game when trying out this game. And
Hi. Hello,
yeah,
that's me.
hi, yep. I'm curious. Okay, how many hours in are you in so far, Brian? And what has been your perspective on that?
I'm only like 2 hours in, so not very far at
Mhm,
all. So basically, I'm at the first point in the game where it really kind of opens up and says, "Go recruit some people." So
mhm,
obviously, as someone, so I'm going to speak. People who have played Suikoden are hearing me talk about it. It's probably going to be a little bit aggravating, but like trying to answer the question, what makes a game a Suikoden or a Suikoden-like game? Like, what is fundamentally different between this and Dragon Quest, Final Fantasy, Tales, Star Ocean, whatever. And obviously, a very key component is just the number of characters. Um, Almost like, and this is the way my brain is trying to parse it. And I don't know if it's the people who have actually played the game would agree with this, but like a strategy or tactics game usually have a very large roster of several dozen characters, where a more contemporary RPG or JRPG would have like 5 to 10. Where this is trying to like thread the needle between, where it's like, no, we can have a traditional RPG with 70 playable characters, and it's not like a tactical or strategy based game in that sense. So I'm at the first point where it's like, go recruit people, and some of the people have small quests associated with them. Like an early character wants you to like go hunting for some enemies, and some of them are literally like, you ran into this person, hey, you should join me. And I assume it gets more intricate the deeper in the game you go. And when you were talking about the slow story burn at the start, one thing that this game does pretty early on, like after your first like effectively tutorial quest, and a lot of games do this. This isn't something novel, but it takes you to like there's a small time skip and like a few months, and it takes you to a room where there's a bunch of previously unintroduced characters, and you don't know, you can kind of glean like, okay, these guys are associated with the League, these guys are associated with the Empire. Oh, here's there's a character that only has one line early on, who's like a beast race that looks like a dragon. I'm like, oh, I wonder who those characters are. So it does a very good job of basically saying like, hey, this world is big, there are a lot of players involved, you are not going to know everything about everyone quite yet, but I'm sure it's coming. So I think that was a very fundamentally sound, like, oh, okay, here are all the things that will be integrated into the game at some point. But now we're going to go back and scope it back down to you're basically me and Adam were kind of joking. Noah joins a group, I believe they're called the Watch, and we're like, they're basically bracers. Like they just do they're like a guild.
Yeah.
And right now it's very like small stakes, Trails in the Sky, first chapter sort of thing.
Yeah, I actually
but you
kind
can
of
easily see how the. Go ahead.
I actually kind of felt, well, this is sort of funny in that, especially early on, maybe less so later on, it does kind of give like a Trails in the Sky vibe, in a sense. Kind of the aesthetics kind of bring to that too. It's sort of like the 2D on 3D. I know Trails in the Sky isn't 2D, but the 3D being sort of like the similar fidelity 3D. The aesthetics are similar. The kind of the vibe is similar. But one thing that's also kind of fun about that is people have made a comparison between Trails in the Sky and Suikoden before. Like there are some. I'm not going to say there's strong similarities, but there's some that you can.
There's surface level visual similarities, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but I'm enjoying early on. Like, it's not open world, but it's open ended. It's just like, hey, go out into town and recruit some people. There's 3 little villages you can go to. Here's a mine you can enter, but you can't go very deep into it yet. I'm assuming that opens up, just like within like the next 30 minutes of gameplay, and just talk to some NPCs. Oh, here's a random character. This is also kind of that surface level Trails comparison. Hey, talk to this random NPC in a house that has no identifying features. They'll give you a book, and I'm like, oh, that's very Trails. So yeah.
Did you get Yusuke yet?
Yes, I did.
Yes.
Yusuke is good. He reminds me of his English voice. I don't know who it is. It sounds like a younger Johnny Young Bosch, kind of. But then he reminds me of JoJo 5 or 6, Josuke Higashikata.
Yeah, he's got that delinquent vibe.
Oh yeah, cool. From the part 4. Yeah.
He reminds me a little bit of that, but yeah,
yeah,
he's too cool for school.
But yeah, this game.
Adam, I have a question for you, Adam. Since this game has so many characters, we don't have to spoil anything about them, but either whether it's their personality or design or whatever, give me like your favorite or favorites, because I know it's hard to pick one sometimes.
I guess on that note, I should more seriously maybe. I actually think this game does a pretty good job. Just like there's so many different characters you meet in the game that there are quite a few of them that they're not like main characters, but they play like considerable roles when appropriate. Like for example, when you go to like the Guardian place, you meet. These are very light spoilers. You meet some elf characters like Alway and Lilwyn, and they're not like main characters, and they really are just one of 100 or whatever. But like they have quite a few lines, and they participate in the story, and have quite a bit of dialogue in those moments in the game. Like they're not just there just to say hi, I'm going to join your party. They actually like contribute to the narrative. And then you meet other characters from the Empire, and some of the stuff that Sane does. And then you meet characters.
This has been shown in the screenshot, but there's like a race of people where they're like sharks. But they get up on they stand up on 2 feet, and they have they're like shark heads.
Yeah, those characters are fun. They maybe participate a little bit less, but but I just think the game does a pretty good job in just having like characters that like participate in the dialogue in the story. Besides, it's not just. It could have easily just been like Noah, Gar, and Leon basically contribute doing all the story stuff, and then all the other characters just sit in the background and never do anything. But that's not the case. Those other side characters do quite a bit when appropriate, and I think I give the game props for that. Like they actually contribute and do stuff. So,
question, does that make sense? Not a major question, but just a general question. Do the Suikoden games have like beast races of characters, Lycans?
Some of them.
Some of them, yeah, not all of them.
I know the reason why I ask is because Suikoden 3 is a duck race.
I don't know to what extent it'll play into the story. So one of the very first characters you get is, I think, Gar. He's a wolf man. And then as you like NPCs in town, you're just as likely to see a human as you are to see like a cat person. It's just normal. Early on, Sane basically says like he calls Gar Lycan, I believe, and Gar is like, my name's Gar, or I have a name. And I don't know if that's just supposed to be like a little bit of a tiny little smattering of world building, like, oh, there are different races. Or if it's going to play a bigger role or not. But it feels good, and the art style is conducive to like having that and feeling it like it's cohesive and part of the world.
This will be a very light spoiler. The game doesn't really focus on like human versus beastman like discrimination or anything, but it's there in like small bits, and I kind of appreciate that, in that it's like there are places in this world that maybe some humans do like have ill feelings or ill will towards beastmen, but it's actually not like a big part of the story. But it kind of, how do I put this? It makes the world maybe feel a little bit more believable, in that there are like the Empire does have this issue that kind of pops up here and there. And actually one of the main characters in the game, well, maybe not a main character, but Swine, he's a piece of shit. He'll actually be the most aggravating in this respect. But it's just that it's present, but not like a main driver of the story, which I kind of appreciate, because there's a lot of stories.
Like here is a conflict that we could have shaped a story around. You're not going to solve everything in this game by playing the story front to finish. Like but here's a conflict in the world of friction that you're not going to solve this here, but it exists, and you'll see slices of it. So I kind of do appreciate that.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
anyways, your original question.
I already know the answer to this question, so just say it.
I mean, I like Yusuke.
No, not just Yusuke. You know who I'm talking about. She's a chaos girl. You might teleport around.
The best.
Oh, Carrie.
Character.
Oh yeah. So
from the little stream I watch, I feel like this is the best character. It's like she's always like, I think this is the right place.
Yeah. So with 100+ characters, some of them are a little bit gimmicky, but they're fun. And like Carrie is the girl that you can recruit, that she allows you to fast travel. This is actually also very Suikoden tuned, in that you unlock fast travel in Suikoden by finding Vicky, and she's actually in every Suikoden game. She's the only character. No, she's one of only two characters who's in every Suikoden game: Vicky and the sorceress woman whose name I forget. The fortune teller. Anyway, Carrie is fun because she's the person who teleports you around, and she always claims she's perfect and flawless and never fails, even though she does. And it's just kind of fun. Like one of the things that she can say when you transport is she'll kind of mutter to herself. She's like, "Is this the right place? I mean, yes, this is the right place. Yep." And just stuff like that. Like hiding her uncertainty, but then on her face is just like, "I'm perfect and I never mess up."
Yep, I literally never mess up. We are here. Yeah. We're at the right place.
I'm great. Literally perfect, awesome. Is what she says.
We didn't get caught in the abyss void in between dimensions. We're all good.
That was intentional. And so yeah, there's characters like that, which are fun.
Yeah, I'm excited for like a lot of more people to play this and see which characters they fall in love with, because there's a game that has like a lot of charming characters, which is like the best way I can put it. Because like there will be like characters that like you think don't like really show up that much, and then like you do like the cooking contest mini game. And there are some characters that like it's like a whole story arc to that. It's like, okay.
Oh, you know one character I really latched onto that I never really expected to?
Who?
Paul. Paul is fun.
Yeah.
Paul is so
great.
I love him. He's like like the engineer nerd, and he's like obsessed with your tank that you get later. And he's just kind of like a dork. Kind of like he's in the military, but he's not like a military person. He's the engineer, and he's just kind of like this so like gold-hearted engineer dork, and just you can't say anything bad about him. Like he's just there to work on his tank, okay?
Mm-hmm. And yeah, you'll meet him throughout the story, and I'm very interested to see what people think of him. But he's funny. He's funny. For me, at first, design-wise, it was Milana. Milana, I really like her. The outfit. She has like a really fun dynamic with your character. She's basically like a necromancer type of character, and like a lot of her lines like making her like you're now working under her. You're a minion under.
You're her thrall.
And then like later on, you'll meet another character that like really bounces off of her personality, and like that character in Milana, like even though it's like it's not the focal point of the story, they still have a lot of great dialogue exchanges that became like one of my favorite duos before the game ended. And also, I just really like Noah's sister, Lean.
Oh
She
yeah,
has a really really fun personality. Uh, she's
she's the
so
luckiest girl in the world.
that's right. And for people who played Eiyuden Chronicle Rising, the prologue spin-off that released some was it like a year ago or so.
2 years.
You
Huh.
yeah, it's not mandatory to play that game before going to this game. You'll be totally fine. But if you did play that game, there'll be certain moments in this game that will hit harder for you because the main protagonist trio of CJ, Garu, and Isha do appear and are recruitable characters in this game and do have a lot of dialogue exchanges um, throughout the game. And there'll be other characters from Rising that appear here and there, but it's not crucial to the understanding of the overall story. It's just like you'll just get more
What's the name of the alligator merchant?
Hogan.
Hogan, he is surprisingly
Did he show
polite.
up?
Yes, he's there. You wouldn't
Yeah,
expect an
Hogan.
alligator to be polite, but he's like super polite.
Yep.
But he is.
Yeah. So yes, you can recruit Hogan as well in the game, and he's like Squash also from Rising also shows up. So characters like that,
Leon is sort of a main character because she's kind of with you the whole time. She ends up kind of just being like Noah's buddy. Like they're just like buddies. But she has a fun gimmick where she started at the watch 2 days before Noah did. And so like she's your senior member, like your senpai, if you will. And what's sort of funny is like Noah just kind of entertains her. And even though she probably knows that Noah's just being nice and entertaining her as like superior officer, she just rolls with it. So they just kind of roll with it. And one of my like favorite little quips that can happen in battle is if Noah gets weak, Leon can protect him like from a fatal hit, and she'll be like, "Keep your look alive, kiddo." She calls him kiddo, and he's like, "Thanks, boss." And it's just fun, even though they're like the same age and they basically started at the same time. He's kiddo and she's boss. That's just how it is.
Yeah, and one of the things that like a lot of people will run into early on between Leon and Noah is that when you unlock the hero combo system, when characters are in battle, they can build up SP, and then you can initiate hero combos that take up the turns of both the character and like multiple characters, depending if like there's 3, 2, 3, or 4 characters involved with the hero combo would that meet the same SP requirement. And like for the one with Leon and Noah, like the animations like Nova's going like does like a barrage of attacks on an enemy, and like Leon's like rolling out like a big punch, and sometimes like Noah will still be in the way, so she'll like launch the enemy and Noah into the stratosphere.
Yeah, she's got a Looney Tunes punch, like Looney Tunes wind up. It's fun.
Yeah,
which suits her character perfectly. So
so there's a lot of little fun little touches in the animation like that, and I think a lot of people an early favorite from a lot of people in the early game will be Francesca as well.
Oh yeah, Francesca.
So
and
it's
I know I talked about this already, but first of all, I really like the art style, like the character art. It's hard to describe. It's like an anime style, but it does feel like a little bit older fashioned, which I think is suitable. Rather than like a modern anime look. But I also just like I love the sprite style and like every character, and there's like tons of characters in this game, and like 70 of them ish or so. Not every character you recruit can join in battle. Sometimes they just have like a function at your base. But like 70 of them can battle, and there's like the animations in battle for their attacks and for their normal stance and when they're weak. Like there's just so many different
it's a lot of
sprite
animation work. Like it's astoundingly a lot.
Yes.
It's like holy crap. And it's all unique too. It's not like like Guard's attack animation is gonna be the same as like say another like maybe Beastman's animation or something like that.
And I also like how there's actually like 2 different sprites for like 2 different angles, like front and back. And sometimes the way the camera works in the game, the camera will sort of swing around, and then like the actual sprites will change from front to back to kind of emulate like rotation. And they didn't have to do that, but they did. So like every single battle character has like multiple sprites that like emulate this sort of dynamic movement of the camera. And like, how do I put this? The game does not feel cheap. Like this took a ton of effort to do this.
But I think a lot of the modern audience will say that because like when they get to the overworld map, like the overworld map is very on its face. It looks like a PS1 RPG overworld map where like it's very basic 3D geometry and it's very sparse. Like there's nothing really of the overworld map that you can like interact with besides like the occasional fishing spot and maybe like a one or two goodies here and there. So, but like compared to like other, big open world games that made for the modern era, I'm sure a lot of people who are used to that, they'll go to the world map. It's like, man, this game looks graphically rough, and then like
yeah, but it feels like a PS1 game. I actually didn't even like consider that. It was like that's just what a world map is.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it's there. It's a function, But I know a lot of people are gonna look to that. It's like this game looks whack. It's like, nah, man.
People need to know that sprite takes a lot of effort to make. Not bad.
And just the number of sprites like for like running animations, or hell, just like a lot of like you talked about how Mio has like her like samurai robes, and like Gar has his like cloak, and Josuke or whatever his name is has his hands in his pockets, and like there's just the number of animations for like their scarves and headbands like blowing in the wind. Like they drew all of that, and it doesn't look cheap, is a great way to put it.
Yeah, I think about it like this. Even like something as simple as the sword grain animation for Sane, like the jumping up in the air and all like the movement in that is tailored uniquely made just for that one attack. Think about that.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy. So, I mean, there's so much else we can get into in this game. It's a very, very dense game with a lot of systems going on. But we want people to see that experience.
Yeah, we haven't really talked about the story much at all. Which...
Yeah, and even like things like the theater or like the Eggfoot racing. You guys will, if you're interested, definitely buy and support this game if you can. Like show the market that there's still interest for these kinds of games, because this is. I won't even say it's a dying breed of game. That this kind of genre is kind of not. You don't see it anymore in this type of like AA space. Yep. I don't even know how you'd categorize it.
Yeah, and if you can't quite like obviously if you can't afford to buy the game immediately, like I mean,
yeah, it'll go on sale.
It's on Game Pass. It's on Game Pass.
Is it 100 Heroes? I know Rising is. I know if 100 Heroes.
Yes, 100 Heroes is on Game Pass. I actually have it preloaded. So
that's cool. Great. Yeah. So if you have Game Pass, definitely give this game a shot.
I'm curious. I'm very curious about the Xbox version of the game, and specifically the Game Pass PC version, going off of some of the stuff that's come out about the Switch and PS5 versions of the game. It's like, oh.
Yeah, so
we all played on PC.
To make up. Yeah, we played it. Me and Adam played it on PC via Steam. It was perfectly fine there in terms of like the parity issues, resolution, and the performance of that. But we are aware of like some of the versions, like the Switch, for example, has pretty rough loading times. Especially has like
wow, it's accurate. It's accurate to the PlayStation 1 experience.
Yeah, it has lengthy loading times, like going in and out of battle. So, and I know that like some people on social media also showed off like the PS5 version has like really has a blurry image quality.
Bad textures, I would say.
And hopefully, there's a day one patch coming for this game. Hopefully, it resolves some of that. I mean, me and Adam are kind of waiting for a day one patch also for some of like one or two hero recruitments, because some of them are bugged in the pre-release.
Yeah, we ran into a few bugs. I would say like most of the pre-release experience was honestly totally fine. There's just a few bugs, so I'm hoping those get ironed out on PC. To be clear. I think I recall. I don't know if this has been confirmed or if this is just speculation, but there's actually kind of a weird, I think maybe bug where like if you play the game at high frame rate on PC, it actually lowers your encounter rate.
And I would believe that, because me and Adam have like
talked to each other about it.
Yeah, the encounter rate is weirdly like inconsistent. Where like you'll go through a dungeon, like it's like a pretty like you traverse this dungeon for like 7 minutes going through maps, and like maybe you'll get into one or two battles, and then like if you go back to the entrance and like retraverse that, like you'll get maybe no encounters.
Yeah, it's kind of weird to say like, is the encounter rate too low?
But yeah,
I watch you play it, and you're like equip this accessory that increases the encounter rate, and I'm like, you're like running in circle for like 40 seconds here.
Yeah.
There's
some speculation that maybe like it's a frame rate thing.
It might be something they have to patch as well. I gave this comparison to Adam. It's like the base encounter is like you be on Estoma in a Shin Megami Tensei game. He's like, yeah. That makes sense. So yeah, well, hopefully the patches before its official release on Tuesday, get that all sorted out.
So I guess I'll maybe
Overall.
start concluding here to say like there are some things with like the game structure and maybe like the narrative and characters that I wish were maybe a little bit better. Like I do have some, qualms here and there. But overall, like I said before, I'm so glad this game exists. It didn't have to, but it does, and I'm so glad it does. So
Yeah, so
and I think there's room to improve, and they basically have more or less said they're going to make a sequel, or they're really hoping that they will. I don't know if it's like actively happening yet, but that's basically the plan. It sounds like is for them to make a sequel. So I hope it happens.
Yeah, I do too. I think, this is a really, really well done game that like I don't know if it'll jive much with like a lot of the modern audience, but if you're kind of craving for that PS1 JRPG, era feeling, this game kind of fits that perfectly to the T. And I'm not saying that it's like everything is great. I'm just saying everything that comes with being a PS1 JRPG era game, both good and bad, is kind of encapsulated in this game.
It sounds like my cup of tea, I guess.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I don't mind modern stuff, but there are just like certain things that it feels like you're not exploring and trying out new things. It's like you want to be challenged at certain times, and modern games just doesn't want you to feel that way because it's, what is it, like annoyance to you, I guess? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, everyone trying to be
I
convenient to you very actively.
I feel like there's been a bit more of a pushback against that in like very recent years, which I appreciate. Like we just had Dragon's Dogma 2, where like the actual difficulty of the game isn't that high, but like the game very much doesn't exactly handhold you. Yeah. So
hopefully I just hope for the best for this game, and hopefully the Rabbit and Bear Studios find success, with the broader public on this game, and hopefully they meet enough expectations in sales and the financials align for them to be able to actively develop like a full blown sequel, whether that has to go to Kickstarter or not. I think even if they went to Kickstarter for that, I think they've gained like the goodwill of people after this game for sure. They give it a shot. Because I think even if it doesn't resonate with like people who don't like play Suikoden, like at least people who backed it, I think they delivered on what the expectations of those people are.
Okay, there's one thing I do want to kind of say about that, and it's something that I didn't back this, but I did back another Kickstarter, which seemingly had similar issues when it came to fulfilling like physical backer rewards.
Okay.
So I know that a lot of people are very upset that they're having to pay like an exorbitant shipping fee for their physical copies, like something like $14 or something. And then there's a separate shipping fee for any of the other physical like rewards once they hit.
Is that the case?
Yeah, and it's reminding me a bit of the Wonderful 101 Kickstarter, which, by the way, that Kickstarter is 4 or 5 years, like 4 years old or something like that. It's been around a while. People are still waiting for physical rewards from that.
Are you serious?
Yes.
That's crazy.
Whenever I back Kickstarter, I just back digital.
Yeah, I remember that Kickstarter
and let it be said, as I've said this on the podcast before, for that Kickstarter specifically, I backed for a PC copy because they showed a PC DVD case. It's like, oh, cool. I'd love an actual physical PC copy of this game. It feels like not many people get it. And I have a Wii U, so realistically, I'm not going to play it again. And then they said, oh, yeah, it's a Steam key. It's like you can install to Steam through a disc. My copy of Dying Light does that. You could have had a disc and it'd still be a Steam copy. And then they were like, well, I asked, hey, can I switch to a Switch or a PlayStation copy? And they just never got back to me until it was too late to change it. And then they sent everyone a Steam code anyway. So it's like I literally, there was no point for me to back this on PC because I would have gotten it anyways.
Yeah. Hopefully, the Kickstarter situation for Eiyuden Chronicle at least is a little bit better than that. Hopefully, that will get what they paid for essentially.
Yeah. The only reason I mentioned that is it doesn't seem to be as bad as that yet, but I'm seeing some rumblings from folks that did back it that are a little bit upset, and I do know that might have a knock-on effect for people that might want to back those higher tiers for a follow-up Kickstarter if they need to go to a follow-up Kickstarter.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I have one more small game thing I want to mention.
Sure.
This game has so many characters. It's smartly designed in that if a character is several levels behind because you maybe haven't used them, there's like a rubber banding effect on EXP, so they'll catch up very, very fast. In fact, it might even be like exploitable in certain ways if you do it right. But my point is that like it's very easy to like mix and match your party. You don't have to feel like, oh, I have to stick with these 6 characters because those are the ones I trained and everyone else is behind. Like, it literally will take you 5 minutes to catch someone else up to where they're competent. It's very quick. That's just the way the game is designed, and that's smart. So yeah, feel free to experiment. Yeah,
exactly. Don't be afraid to experiment with party members and synergy, and the game will kind of encourage that in certain ways because sometimes you need to like have prerequisite characters in your party early on, but then you can put them into attendance slots if you have your own party. And also hero combos. Hero combos have certain characters that are needed to like be both in the party together to activate them.
Well, like for example, there's a sequence at the end of the game or near the end of the game that the character you mentioned before, Milana, who is like the necromancer girl, she doesn't have to go on that mission, but it makes a lot of sense for her to go. Like, she's kind of relevant. And so I had never used her before that point. And like, okay, I will bring her along. And she caught up very quickly, right away, no issues. So like, the game allows you to do that. So.
And that's funny because like when I first recruited her, she was like a lock in my party. Like once I leveled her up a little bit and saw her rune slot allotment, I'm like, she's in my permanent party. No matter
she's good.
Yeah. She's great.
So
yeah.
And I know you guys have kind of already mentioned this, but as someone who has not played Suikoden, I haven't gotten very far in Eiyuden, I'm enjoying the hell out of it. It's not like, oh, is this a game for Suikoden fans? It sure is, but like not a requisite at all. Like if you have any I mean, that's why I contribute to this website. But if you're a fan of just that flavor of RPG,
old school RPGs, essentially, like you're going around zones. There's random encounters. And there's a whole bunch of other like features like town building. It's a very robust game from beginning to the end. And I know I was helping guide work, so my playtime is a little bit inflated. But like right now, my save file's like over 70 hours. So like realistically, it's probably more like 50 to 55-ish on a very thorough playthrough. I also want to stress when the guides embargo goes up, we'll have guides to like help you out recruiting characters, finding them, what you do for them, but also I'll just say it here, like there's no one really permanently missable. So like it's not like for people who might be scared because of Suikoden 5, for example, which had like a lot of permanently missable characters. This isn't the case with this game. It's pretty forgiving on like when you can recruit characters. It's not like, oh my god, I fucked up something like 30 hours into the game and I missed this character forever.
I'm trying to remember. Was there something missable in 2? I remember you cannot get the 2 ending unless you recruited everybody.
Do you remember those little chipmunk things in Suikoden 2? There's like 3 of them. I think I missed one in one of my playthroughs. Yeah. Was that Suikoden 1? I forget. Shoot. But I know they had some missable characters.
I remember one of the characters in Suikoden games, like you need to like complete the game in a certain time before. I don't know, it was like a 20-hour thing. I forgot who.
I don't remember.
That was in 2. That was
2. Yeah.
You get to a certain point in a certain amount of time. Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a time. There's also one dialogue choice that was timed, and if you missed that timed dialogue choice, you cannot get the real ending because something happens to this character.
Yeah. So it's not as crazy as that. Okay. At least this game is like it's forgiving in that respect. It's not like
that's where it is modern, more modern.
Yes.
Not like you missed this thing from 20 hours ago.
There
might be some like small missable enemies if you care about that. But otherwise, none of the characters are. Pretty sure.
Yeah, seems right. So yeah, that's Eiyuden Chronicle 100 Heroes. Just our overall thoughts. I think Adam and I feel pretty strongly about it. We don't know how it's going to go down for a lot of people, but at least we feel pretty strongly about it, and we love it.
Yeah, I'm definitely. This is basically gonna be my main game. There's a lot of games, of course, coming out in the back part of April, as we've discussed, and this is obviously I'm kind of biased because it's the one that I had access to at first. But it's probably one I'm going to basically be sticking with because it is very cozy and I'm enjoying the hell out of it within the first couple hours. And if you're saying it picks up past this point, like there's
Yeah,
no
it gets so much better. Believe me, it gets so much better.
And the reason why I am only a few hours into Eiyuden Chronicle 100 Heroes is because I have completed two other smaller things in preparation for the podcast this week. One, a new game, or at least a new game update that came out just a couple days ago at the time of recording. And then I did play through Broken Roads, and I'll have just a few words to say on that, but not too many. But before that, I talked about I played just came out a couple days ago. I played to completion the second and seemingly final update for Final Fantasy 16. Of course, Final Fantasy 16, one of the marquee releases from last year. We kind of discussed it at length. We kind of gave our final verdict on the game in a sense. During the end of the year podcast last year for 2023 Game of the Year stuff. So kind of a known quantity at this point. It had an update. It was shadow dropped, I believe, in December with the Echoes of the Fallen. I think I talked about it, but maybe I didn't. If we
I think
were
you did.
doing,
I think you
yeah,
did.
if we were, but it can be summed up in they added a nice, neat, cool dungeon with a very spectacular boss at the end in terms of like um, visuals and like being a cinematic set piece. So what this one is, the second DLC is the Rising Tide, and this is the more substantial of the two DLCs. Kind of very much framed as like an end game kind of addition. So the Final Fantasy 16, the point of no return is before you head to a place called Origin at the very end of the game. And as you do your like the side quests, we kind of talked about a little bit back in the last summer when the game was contemporary, how the side quests of Final Fantasy 16 were kind of discussed as being like very boilerplate, very basic, right until the end of the game where they finally start getting some like actual like substance to them. And the very last side quest, I believe it's called Priceless. I don't quite remember. It's kind of like the capstone quest of the game. And once you complete that, you unlock access to the Rising Tide. So the Rising Tide, it is very much framed like even someone who hasn't played the Rising Tide could probably say the next two or three sentences that I'm about to say because it's kind of predictable in that sense. It's more Final Fantasy 16. It introduces the one missing icon of the game in Leviathan, the icon of water. You meet a new character who's the kind of like the poster character of the DLC. Her name is Shula, and she is basically part of a water clan. I think they're called the Moats of Water from the long lost region of Mysidia. And basically Mysidia, based on some dialogue that Joshua has early in the DLC, is supposedly a place that had gone missing, or at least the clan was thought to have believed to have been eradicated or vanquished or exterminated, which seems a little bit strange because on the map, they're literally like just on the other side of the bay. However, playing devil's advocate, they do talk about how they use the word glamour, like in Final Fantasy 14. Basically, they have glamour that one tangent that's related is that at the very end point of Final Fantasy 16, right before you head to Origin, the world is quite ugly. Like the sky is all purple, and it's very drab. And some people were hoping that they would like kind of address that, just because it's not pleasing. And in Mysidia, they kind of do. They're just like, yeah, we have a glamour up, so the sky looks blue, but only in that region. And it seems kind of like a little bit pointless. Like, oh, I guess that's easy on the eyes, I suppose. But if you go back to the regular locations, it still looks the same. Uh, so Jill, I don't know if I should just start out with like a little summary of this,
Sure.
but basically Jill, Clive, and Josh and Torgal head to Mysidia to basically deal with the icon of water and its dominant. And no, it is not Medicine Girl. It's a new character. It actually, yeah,
Popular fan theory.
Yeah, it's like, why does she get so much screen time? And she's like, oh, it's like everyone's probably was DLC.
That's so funny. That is still a funny, very funny fan theory. Sorry, go on, Brian.
Yeah, so this is it makes sense narratively, but I think it's less inherently interesting. Is the dominant of water is actually an infant who's kind of been frozen in time. They see that being a dominant is like a curse, which makes sense. His name or her name, I think it's a boy, it's an infant, named Walijas, Walijas. And basically this Walias has been basically frozen in place at a location called the Surge for decades. But you have to kind of deal with it now, and you're trying to like free Walias from the curse without angering Leviathan, and that kind of goes in, at the end of the final boss of the DLC is Leviathan. Like it's not a surprise, not a spoiler. So of course it is. But you go there, you end up in a new little town called Haven, and it's basically like any town in Final Fantasy 16. It's moderately explorable, but it's not too, it's probably like 7 total buildings, which I'm not saying like the more buildings make a better town, but it's on par with every other location in the game. You eventually do a few little side quests. The side quests are pretty basic to start out, and one interesting thing is that these side quests, like some of them will kind of unlock capability that you already had. Like one of them, you do it, and the reward for the side quest is now you can call your chocobo in this new area. It's like, oh, okay. I didn't even realize that I couldn't. I just hadn't tried. But you do this little 10-minute side quest, and then you can unlock that. You unlock a shop. You unlock your forge. We've kind of talked at length about the gearing system in Final Fantasy 16. Talking about a game that doesn't want to inconvenience you, doesn't want you to feel that friction. That kind of feels like Final Fantasy 16 to a T in a way. You are never wanting for resources. You have 1,000 bomb ashes that you'll never need, or magic ash or whatever. And I do think the DLCs have addressed that in some way. The gearing for the base game, a lot of it is you have an icon ability, like you might have Will o' the Wisps, which is one of it's either Phoenix's or Ifrit. It's one of the fire icons abilities they have very early on, and you have an accessory that makes it do more damage, and then you have an accessory that lowers its cooldown, and that is most of the accessories in the game. It just picks an icon ability and either lowers the cooldown or increases the damage. And that's still true for Leviathan. You get access to the Leviathan icon abilities in this DLC. That's actually not a spoiler.
Man, you're spoiling everything about this DLC.
I feel like I don't have to play it anymore.
But I will say that the first DLC, Echoes of the Fallen, did add some accessories that actually felt like meaningful. Like one of them basically increases the cap of how much damage bonus you can get on stagger. And then a few other things as well that I'm blanking on right now, but actually like fundamental accessories that aren't just tied to one icon's ability. And there's a little bit of that in Rising Tide as well, where you have basically accessories that will augment whenever for those that haven't played this game, like Adam, I believe might be the only one here that hasn't played it. When you have an icon equipped, you have kind of its like fundamental ability. Like for Odin, you have access to the sword. I forget the sword's name. Or with Garuda, you have access to being able to like yank enemies out of the air or pull them down if you're halfway through their stagger meter. That's kind of like their fundamental ability, in addition to like their cooldown, like active abilities. And the Rising Tide has accessories that will augment those. So they're a little bit more generic than the existing accessories. And why am I talking so much about gearing? I just want to kind of highlight it as the DLCs to Final Fantasy 16 do make that part of the game a little bit more interesting. However, it's a bit of a shame that it's so late in the game, because basically everything in Rising Tide is almost going to be the last thing you do before you go to the end game point of return. So like those accessories, you're not going to really get a lot of use out of unless you do all the stuff in the base game and then you go back through on Final Fantasy mode, which is basically the New Game Plus mode. So it's a little bit like, well, that's interesting, but I'm not actually going to get a lot of utility out of it. And I played everything here on Final Fantasy mode, so I'm basically kind of like at a point where I have no real incentive to play through the game again. But the story is interesting enough, and some of the things that people were kind of hoping for that I think Square Enix actually kind of tried to talk about didn't really come true. One thing that was brought up, I forget who said this, but there was some hope that Jill would have a major role to play in this DLC. She's present, but not really. She gets Shula, the NPC that they added for this DLC, gets probably the most to do outside of Clive, which is fine, but it does mean that Josh and Jill are kind of just along for the ride. They don't really. Josh has actually less to say and do than Jill does. He's literally just kind of there. And then Jill kind of she shows up in battle with you, but she just kind of does what she always does, or any of the party members in Final Fantasy 16 do. They're there, but they don't really contribute, or they contribute in very small ways. Very early in Final Fantasy 16, there's a boss fight that you fight with Cid. It's like the rolling salamander. It's I forget the is it Fafnir? I don't remember, but it's the salamander that has like a spiky shell and rolls around like a beetle. And then you fight a lava version of it when you go to the Mother Crystal with Jill. You fight another version of that, which I didn't know if that was like tongue in cheek or if it was just kind of like, oh, here's this boss again, reskinned a third time. Like, okay, that's the choice. It's one of those things where it's like on its face it feels cheap, but maybe there's like something subtext there. I don't know. I will say though that the final boss fight is Leviathan. I'll talk about him later. You also fight a I'll just give you the name. I won't really get it's kind of a story centric boss. The name is called Timekeeper. And that is a very cool boss. It's probably my favorite boss of the game. And I kind of talked about with the base game. A lot of people were really disappointed in the Odin what's the character's name?
Barnabas.
Barnabas. Yeah, I actually I really liked Barnabas as a silly character, but I really liked that fight because it felt a little bit. I like fights where you're giving your full kit and not like you're playing as Ifrit and you're like in QTE mode.
Absolutely.
And the Timekeeper fight is basically that. It's Clive, Torgal, Jill, and Shula fighting the Timekeeper, and it's a really, really like spectacular fight in terms of Square Enix flexing its muscles and actually being quite challenging. Of course, I'm playing on Final Fantasy mode, so maybe it's less challenging on the base mode, but really cool fight. I enjoyed it a lot. Genuinely a highlight. Then one thing that the way that this DLC is paced is that you go to like a dungeon, you go back and do side quests in town, you go to a dungeon, you go back and do side quests in town, you go to a dungeon, you fight the Timekeeper, and then immediately it kind of goes into like, okay, by the way, you have to fight Leviathan now. Like you can't go back to town. Go fight Leviathan, and then you go there, and it's an icon fight through and through. You play as Ifrit, which with all the benefits and drawbacks that has, you move a lot more slowly. All the attacks have really big wind up. It still requires a fair bit of skill. It's not just matching QTE buttons. There's one actual like DPS check where you have to break down a shield within a limited amount of time, which is not the first time the game's done that, which actually is quite tight, where if you end up not dodging all the hits, you're going to run out of time and have to restart. And I actually went to the Reddit and it seemed like a lot of people were struggling with this. Like I failed it 2 or 3 times. Like, man, am I like just doing it wrong? And then some people were like, I didn't expect to be like filtered out by the Leviathan fight at this for the DPS check. I'm like, oh, okay, it's not just me.
I think the base game is just so easy to the point that people wasn't expecting something challenging to come out. That's kind of like my speculation from this.
Yeah. But then after you do the Leviathan fight and you resolve all the issues, it does kind of feel like very segmented. Like you go back to town and nothing really carries back with you other than like the accessories that you got. Because everyone else just hangs out in Haven and Shula just kind of hangs as it's like the city's protector. So it really kind of feels DLC-y in that way where it's like carved out of the rest of the game, but you get a little bridge at the end of the game to go there and do a thing. And then the Leviathan icon equipment is actually pretty interesting. It doesn't sound interesting on paper, but after doing like the trials with it, I kind of gelled with it a little bit. So this is all speculative, but it really feels like, I don't know if this is true, but it really feels like the icons were supposed to have weapons associated with them. And you get that a little bit with Odin and the sword, and you get that a little bit with there's another one. Is it Titan with the gloves?
No, you don't. You. It's only Odin. It's only Odin.
Maybe it's just
in the
only
base
Odin.
game.
So and Leviathan feels similar like that. When you press circle, you get access to like the Leviathan's like water cannon, and like it's basically a ranged, focused kit, and it actually feels like it does. It kind of looks clunky on paper when you first use it. It feels clunky, but as you kind of learn it, it actually feels pretty fun. The way you can kind of like use a certain ability to line up enemies in a row, and then you do like a tidal wave that goes like shoots straight forward at all of them. It's I actually really quite enjoyed it. And actually the trial for the trial of water at the Chronoliths or whatever, probably the easiest trial in the game, mainly because I feel like Leviathan's kit is like overtuned like in the player's favor. So it's fun, but it also it's very similar to Odin, where it's like you have like a completely new like kit when you have it equipped. It's not just a button you press or like dash like Phoenix gets. It feels a little bit more involved, and it kind of feels like the game I feel like would be a little bit better received if all the kits worked like that. And I know that sounds easy to say as just a player who didn't have to design the game, like, oh, just make all of the icons feel better and it'd be a better game. Like, of course that's a little bit tautological, but I do think it's one, we talked about a little bit about this with the Tales of Arise DLC, where we talked about it didn't add anything fundamental to the game; it was just more of it. Where the Leviathan kit and the secret bonus kit do feel very fun to use, and it does feel worthwhile in that sense as a DLC that gives you a little bit more than just here's additional story and quests. It does also have this interesting mode called Kairos Gate, and they've talked about this on the uh, newsletter and trailers for it. It's kind of like an arcadey, somewhat roguelike mode where it's like a cave of trials sort of thing where you go through like 20 different arcade floors, and between floors you're scored, and based on your scoring you can like give yourself boosts, either permanent or temporary. And it's fun for what it is. I only played through it once for the trophy because I'm shallow like that. But it does seem like if you're a sort of person that really likes to play like the challenging, because the game already had like the chapter select where you could play it on like Ultimania mode. It gives you another version for that. So for those that really do gel with the combat of this game, the Kairos Gate seems like a fun arcadey option for it. It's genuinely I think interesting and well thought out. I don't know if it can be like cheese or anything like that, but in all though, I will say that for being the meteor of the two DLCs, it was a little bit short. I basically did everything. I completed the story in about 3.5 hours. Echoes of the Fallen was about 2 hours, so this is a little bit longer. And then when I went back to clear up all the quests and Kairos Gate and trophies, I think my total additional playtime was like 5 hours. Like you can do everything in 5 hours, which
Oh,
I
so
don't
there's
want to say like,
still there's still like new content to do after you get the Leviathan's kit.
yeah, but not a lot. You go back and there's a few more quests in town, but none of these quests are like super substantial.
Because
They're a little bit more.
I'm trying to think of the practical like implementation of this, right? Like if you're to like I want to replay this game on PC because I want to enjoy like the higher frame rate and all the neat things they'll introduce in the PC version. And obviously I want to do these new DLC things because I assume they'll be bundled into that. And I'm thinking like, okay, I'm going this new Rising Tide DLC is accessible basically near the end of the game, like at the very end. That's
Mhm.
essentially, and you're saying it's like it pretty much opens up after you do like all the other side quests or something like that. And
There's like 10 or 11 new side quests. You can do like
yeah,
6 of them before Leviathan and 5 of them after, something like that. And these
okay.
quests, they're what the main reward for these are like either accessories themselves or gear for upgrading your equipment. And upgrading your equipment is still basically kind of 90% linear. And then you do get some like the best in slot stuff you get from the Kairos Gate. So the Kairos Gate does have that incentive. It calls it like first time rewards, where you go to Mysidia, you go to the shop, you can buy a new belt. And then if you get the items from the side quest and from the Kairos Gate, you can upgrade it to a higher tier version on that belt, which to my understanding is the best in slot for the game. And the thing is, I played on Final Fantasy mode, which already kind of tweaked some of that a little bit. But the thing is that it's still pretty limited because you still only have attack, stagger, health, and defense. Like it's like 4 total stats. Well, it's more than that because when you level up, you get all your stats. But the only stats you can adjust with your gear. And there's no like affinity for like elements or statuses. It's all just linear upgrades, number yellow good, number red bad sort of thing. So it's still Final Fantasy 16 in that way. There's no like, oh, I should equip this belt if I want this sort of build, or this belt if I want this sort of build, etc. The only way that that's slightly different, this is the one time this game has done this, is that you can equip a new weapon called the Tonberry knife, which has a very low, well, not very low, but a relatively low attack, but an insanely high stagger, which I could see being maybe fun to mess around with. But that's like the first time Final Fantasy 16 has done that at all, because it's always been like, oh, this sword is clearly better than this sword. It's a linear upgrade. So like, okay, finally near the end of the game after the second DLC, they finally done that. So that could be fun to see, like people do builds with that sword to see if the high stagger sword is fun. But like you already have so many kits at your disposal to almost perma stagger enemies anyway. So I don't really know the utility of that, but maybe someone who is because I'm not really digging into Ultimania level challenges or things like that. So maybe there's something there for it to really shine in. But yeah, it really does seem like the best way to get the bang for your buck out of this DLC is to do it on your first playthrough, and then you carry all the new gear to your second playthrough where you can mess with the new accessories and stuff. Because for me, it's like, okay, I only have the final boss to go. That's it.
But surely, people will mod in like weapons for your whenever you switch to icons, and then that will somehow make it awesome and really fun to play.
I have a question. Is your ultimate weapon still the best in slot or not anymore because of this
No,
DLC?
there's a new sword you get. Like if you do the Kairos, I forget what it's called, honestly, because it's the very last thing before. Like I got my last trophy, so I did enjoy this game a fair bit. Enough that I got all the trophies. So I don't. That might just be brain rot. I'm not sure, but so I got my last trophy for finishing the Kairos gate. I walked over to guy forged dude I forget the name of. I got my new best sword for getting all the new materials, and now it's my best in slot sword. I forget what it's called. It's pretty ugly, but you can change what the sword looks like now. They added that, and yeah.
Did you say the same thing for ultimate weapon when you got it? It's like, oh, this is pretty ugly.
Maybe. Yeah, but that was literally the last thing I did. Is I got my new sword and like, all right, I'm done. Turn off. So I didn't really mess with it at all. But yeah, you do get new swords, but
I never
there's
really
all
messed
mostly
with like
linear.
I never really invested like cosmetic like overrides. Like if the best thing looks fucking ugly, then I'm living with it no matter
Look,
what.
in every
I
MMO I
played
play, I always wear the bikini armor because it gives you the best defense. Okay.
I played Xenoblade 1 before
Uh
the
huh.
definitive
Uh
edition,
huh.
where everyone's gear just looks atrocious, but you
Everyone
don't
looks like
have
a
any say in
clown
it.
for the final
Yeah,
battle.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I love the Xenoblade art style, like, in general, but whoever was responsible for, like, gear in that game just has no sense anyways, I'm on a tangent here, I'm on a soapbox.
I designed it.
Alright.
Now what?
Uh, you got better after
Oh, thank you.
All right, but yeah, that's Rising Tide. It's more Final Fantasy 16. It's very self-contained. It doesn't really shake. It's not gonna like surprise you in any meaningful way. It does have a really cool boss fight at the end with Timekeeper, a kind of more mid boss fight with Leviathan. Leviathan Kid is super cool. Some of the accessories are quite neat. I wish more of the accessories in the game were like that. Still, the sword is you get gear and items without thinking about it, and you can upgrade your sword whenever you decide to go to the anvil. That's pretty much it.
Did you get the hidden kit in this DLC? Like
Yeah,
the
I did.
like
I didn't mess with it a ton, but I've seen a lot of people mess with it. Apparently, it's complete. Like Leviathan, I said was overpowered because Leviathan you get fairly early on, and so I used it a fair bit. And then the other one you get near the very end, so I didn't mess with it much because you get near the end, and I'm like, all right, I'm done. But apparently, it's insanely overpowered. Like it can be. Like yeah, but you do get a second kit near the very end of the game. And then the other game I finished, I will not spend much time on this at all because it seems like it has completely bombed and has barely had over 500 people playing it on Steam at max, and that is Broken Roads. So this game, inspired by Fallout 1 and 2, takes place in the Australian outback. Also very much as you play it, inspired by Disco Elysium, you can kind of tell. So I was eager to play this game, even after like I have still not. We talked about it. We talked a lot about Fallout last week. I still not have watched the show, but I do have it queued up and I will watch it. So that kind of made me a little bit more eager to play Broken Roads because you've seen a bunch of headlines about
Yeah.
Fallout games. Are some of them, or maybe not all of them, have like had new max player accounts on Steam and other platforms. Like they're doing very well right now. People are re-downloading them, buying them outright, playing them. And I'm like, well, I've already played all those. Let me play Broken Roads, and maybe that was a mistake. So this game was not received well at launch. I know our reviewer for the game, Paige, who's still working on her review, based on the way she talks about it, she absolutely loathes this game. I don't want to put words in her mouth, but she has not been kind to it whenever she's brought it up in chat. Uh, I I saw the potential there, but I agree it feels very undercooked. But in not like a broken way, not like this game wasn't crashing on me. I had a few bugs, but nothing like egregious, nothing that I can't deal with. but the design of the game is very silly in ways that I don't quite comprehend what the intent was. So in this game, you pick an origin, and the origin is kind of like Dragon Age Origins, where you pick like one of 4 backgrounds. It gives you like a little bit of like an introduction, like where your character comes from, like an hour of gameplay that introduces you to the world, the characters, etc. It's a very contemporary, kind of almost like tactical game in a sense, where uh, you have action points and you have movement points, and on your character's turn, you can exhaust them in any order. You can attack, then move then attack, then move more. I believe you can do that. Very basic stuff. You equip a main weapon and an off weapon. You have like 3 gear slots: head, armor, boots, things like that. Uh, the interesting thing is for this game is that almost everything involving character progression is based around combat. Not everything, but mostly everything. How much health you have, how much melee damage you do, your accuracy, your crit chance, whether or not items will heal more, things like that. However, within like the first like 6 hours of this game, and this game only took me like 12 hours to beat. So that's kind of gives you an idea like the scope. There was so little combat that I was like, I did my tutorial. You do a little couple tutorial fights, and then I leveled up maybe 6 or 7 times in a row just from doing quests. That I think that can work in some games. Like look at Disco Elysium, look at Vampire the Masquerade, where you get a lot of EXP for doing quests. I like that design in a on its face. However, when every time you level up and you're slotting points into skill trees that is all almost entirely around combat and gear, it feels incongruent in that way. So much so that I wanted my character to be a melee focused character. I just thought that might be fun. By the time I really got into the part of the game where it actually has combat, I had already maxed out my melee stat because I had leveled up like 6 or 7 times before combat really became regular enough. So in the back half of the game, once that was truly regular enough, I was just completely like no challenge at all because I had maxed my melee stat. And you could, if I decided to make a range character, you could do the same sort of thing. So the game kind of presents itself a little bit like Disco Elysium, especially in the way it talks about morality, but everything about character progression is combat focused. So it feels like not broken in like a this game doesn't work sort of way, but broken in a fundamental these systems don't jive, don't fit together sort of way. Talking about morality system, it does do something that's pretty interesting. So imagine you've got like a color wheel, like a circle on a chart, and that circle is divided into 4 quadrants. One of them it will call utilitarian, where you're basically like trying to weigh everything as rationally and as coldly and unemotionally as possible. You have one that's humanist, which is like trying to focus on the goodwill of human, like of people. There's one that's nihilist, which is basically like you're looking out for number one. And the last one is Machiavellian, which is kind of like nihilist adjacent, but it's basically like the ends justify your means. I'm looking out for me and my family. Uh, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, even if in search of that goal, I'm really fucking over the few, sort of thing. That's the way that I seem to understand it. And I'm not a philosopher, so I apologize if that's how it's kind of presented in the game. And the interesting is about these 4 quadrants on the circle is that as you make decisions, you have like a wedge. Like imagine like a pizza slice coming out from the center of the circle that is overlapping portions of your 4 quadrants. So you can be utilitarian in one quadrant, but your pizza slice might be sliding a little bit towards humanist or a little bit more towards nihilist, depending on the choices you make, and depending on where your character currently like sits based on the choices you've made. You might be like you can't be utilitarian throughout 90% of the game and then make a very self-centered nihilist choice at the very end because you've kind of built your character away from that. Which on its face, I think this is really cool. I think that's quite interesting, and it's not over designed. I think it's pretty simple. The only thing is that I just don't think there's enough that makes use of it. It doesn't really feel like it matters that much in the grand scheme of things. And I think a lot of that is just by the scope of the game is quite smaller than I intended. Um, I was I try to play games pretty completionist. I was doing side quests as I ran into them. I tried to exhaust the map when I explored. I didn't just critical path it, but I still beat the game in 12 hours. And you might say 12 hours, that's, plenty of games are 12 hours. That's fine. But it just feels like this game teed up a lot of systems, a lot of and then the total number of combat encounters in this game, I think, like if you add up wild encounters and everything, I think was like less than 30, less than 25. So very kind of narrowly focused. And then the amount of dialogue choices that I made, I felt like that actually mattered was maybe like 6 or 7. It just doesn't feel like there's enough to make use of any of that. If they had kind of like trimmed the fat and focused the game around that scope, I think it could be. And the devs have already talked about how they're planning. I think the game might have already been updated since I've uninstalled, and they're planning another major update in May. And one of the things they put on their roadmap was more early game encounters. So I'm not the first person to bring up that the game is just too dialogue focused at the front. And I guess they're going to try to address that. And I obviously wish them the best. I hope that they can kind of figure out ways to supplement the game in the way that it comes up short so far. But it does feel like a lot of the issues are a little bit more fundamental than just say add more here, subtract something here, and you'll end up with something that works better. It seems like it requires a little bit more pulling it out from the roots.
It's it's kind of hard because like but for people who are following the marketing of this game, definitely felt like it had a bigger scope than what eventually came out, and it also feels like they made like fundamental core design decisions that I don't know if you can like really back down from at this point in time. The game's already released. It is the way it is. I don't know how much you can like necessarily revamp it to be like to address something that people already want. Like it feels like who are you gonna like pull back into this game then? Or like how are you gonna get more people to like buy this game down the road when it's like kinda already is what it already is. And that's
I will
tough.
say that some of the moment to moment writing and characters are pretty interesting. So one of the creative designers behind this game is Colin McComb. I'm not
Mhm.
exactly sure like where he started, but he did also work on Torment Tides of Numenera, which I played 2018, which I felt very similarly about. Where like I didn't feel like the package was that good, but there are moments and moments that are pretty interesting. Like for instance, one part of the game pretty early on is that you're tasked to basically choose a side and basically picking a mayor for this like one bastion of humanity left in this part of the desert. And the mayor that's I forget their names because I kind of played this game and almost disposed like my brain just brain dumped of it. But the existing mayor is basically a complete hard ass like Machiavellian, looking out for her town and no one else's. Uh, kind of doesn't trust you, so she's not gonna give you an inch for you to take a mile. She's very, very standoffish, and you're kind of framed that you're not supposed to like her. But then the other candidate is a lot more humanist, but is also kind of a bit of like a gives promises you have no assurance he can actually keep sort of thing. He's like, "Yeah, we're just gonna let everyone in the city, and I'm gonna free all the slaves, and I'm gonna do and he's basically like feels like a phony like snake oil salesman. And those are the two people you have to pick between. It's kind of like, well, shit. Like I don't know which of these two I should vouch for mayor. So it's nice that it's very morally gray in that sense. And that's always kind of like the sweet spot, right? Where it's like, well, I'm going to have to pick what the one I think makes the most sense. And you can see how, based on the other philosophical parts of the game, where you could say like, well, I'm a utilitarian, so I'm actually going to stick with the current mayor because she knows how to divvy her resources. Or if you're more humanist, you could say, well, this guy might be a snake oil salesman, but his heart's in the right spot. So maybe I'll go with him. I could kind of see like how a more fully featured version of the game that could be really interesting, but it just doesn't quite reach that. There's also a part later in the game where you're working with a little settlement that's a little bit more tech oriented, a little bit more like trying to like rebuild humanity from the cobbles of technology that have been lost to them, sort of focus. And this one scientist is absolutely convinced that this newcomer in the town is a spy. You end up learning that this person is a spy, but not in the way you think. Like she actually is there for good reasons. And I know I'm speaking at a high level here because I'm trying to just give you the cliff notes. So you can kind of say like, well, Miss Scientist, you're correct. This newcomer is a spy, therefore I'm going to rat them out. Or you can say like, well, yeah, I learned she's a spy, but not in the circumstances that you initially posited. So I'm gonna actually hide them, like, and lie to you to your face. So there's interesting moments like that that I think in a game that had longer to cook could really be quite interesting. It just doesn't quite get there because, like I said, the whole experience is over in 12 hours, and any individual component of the game is over in an hour or less. It's just very brief. You feel like you're on rails. You're flying through it at 100 miles an hour, and then you reach the end of the game. And then the final antagonist of the game you're introduced to like 40 minutes before you have to deal with him. So there's no
Classic.
buildup of there's no buildup of like animosity or anything. You kind of hear from him off screen, then you meet him, and then within an hour, at least in the ending I got, you deal with him, and then that's the end of the game. I do have one small. I know I'm tired. I've already talked about this game more than I intended to. I do have one small other tiny anecdote is that you do get party members in this game. You absolutely have no control of how they level up. You know how in other games like Baldur's Gate or I think Baldur's Gate.
So how do you think about that? They just patched that so you can manually level up your.
Oh wow.
Party
Okay, so
members.
before that patch,
Mhm.
in other games, they often have a toggle. I'm thinking like classic BioWare, things like that, auto level, where like if you wanted to, you could just say like, yeah, always just level up Garrus for me, deal out his points for me, whatever. I don't want to deal with that. Well, that was Broken Roads for every companion. By default, you had no say. But I guess now they've changed that. So I guess kudos on that because some people really want to like fine tune. I want this character to be tanky or this character to be a glass cannon or whatever. Um, Another thing is that just this is one an interesting design thing that I guess they're actually also addressing in either the current patch or the upcoming patch is that when you're on the world map, you can flee from any battle without consequence, which feels kind of nice to have, but it also just feels like traversal on the world map is absolutely there's no friction in that sense where you're
Yeah.
just like I can just explore this whole damn map, and if I run into a pack of wolves or whatever, I can just run away. Like there's no harm to running away. There's no like
Is there like a chance
run
of
away.
failure to run away?
No. Well,
Oh, okay.
I think there is now, but when I played it, there wasn't. You just say you ran into a pack of wolves, fight or flee, and I just say flee, and there's no animation or anything. You're just like the wolves went away or you got away. Continue on. You're like, oh, okay.
Okay.
Which felt like that's very convenient, but also like it makes it feel like exploring the map has no risk at all.
Right.
Like, oh, I'm low on health. What doesn't matter? I can just flee from everything from this point until I can heal
Yeah.
up. But so what is my key takeaway here? I feel like in very small snippets of individual character interaction and maybe some snippets of kind of like ambiguous quest design in a good way, the game had some good ideas and creative ideas at heart. It feels like just the pieces don't come together. Like imagining an artwork that the individual jigsaw pieces that put it together just don't fit together. It you can kind of see what it was supposed to look like, but it's just not there. And maybe after a few patches, it'll get there. But it does feel like, at least at this point in time, that it's going to take more than just patchwork.
I,
It's
I,
one
I
of the things
think
where
I
like,
think they've burned like the goodwill of a lot of people with this, especially because this is a game that was like, remember, like its initial, like it had its release date before this was like
Mhm.
sometime like November, December last year, or maybe a little bit before that, and then like
November, I think.
several days before it came out, they're like, oh, we're delaying this like to a fucking indefinite date because
Mhm.
of last minute things that we saw, and then it still came out at this condition. And then of course they had like the very classic line now from developers, like, this was a rough launch, dot dot dot. So here's what we're gonna do to fix it. Here's our map to fix our game. So it's like, and then for
And
for
I
I think,
didn't.
and like, people are getting tired of this trend of like, okay, great, another game that's like fucking broken in like crazy ways.
Yep.
Great, you
And,
know.
and the thing is that I didn't really have. So this sounds silly. This is a boiled frog of me. I played enough CRPGs that if a quest breaks, like it doesn't really affect me as much as it should. I had broken quests in this game. For instance, I had a quest where like a person was evicted from town, but my quest was still saying like report back to them in order to like uh get reward for this quest, but they were gone. They were evicted. And like I think if I know, some of these quest trees are pretty complicated, so I can understand like maybe I did something in an order that wasn't expected. But like a game that had been able to been like truly polished would have something like you can no longer report in this quest because this character is no longer in town. So in a fail state or something like that. But it doesn't have that. It just permanently in my log like report back to Maria or whatever her name was, and like Maria's no longer here. She's gone. And so but I didn't have like broken like animations or like I didn't get hard locked in the way I think Paige seemed to imply that she was. So it didn't feel hot in that sense, like coming in hot. It just felt more like they didn't quite realize their vision. Uh, yeah,
Yeah. So
that's my summary.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see if it somehow bounces back after the end of the roadmap, whenever that is. But I think
hopefully they break
I,
even so that they can like
yeah.
use the learning experience. I forget even the studio's name, but use the learning experience and into their next project. I don't want to say it's a lost cause, but it's either a lost cause or just it's going to require a significant amount of rework to get it to where they want it to be. So hopefully they find
Yeah,
the
and even
resources
then, it's
needed
like
to do that.
you're gonna have the massive task of somehow convincing people, hey, this is
Yeah,
good
first,
now.
yeah,
It's like,
initial first appearances and things like that.
yeah, we'll see.
So if you're
Let's hope so.
curious and you want to play through it, it doesn't take that long. It's just not something I can recommend other than for those that are curious.
Also, to be kind of blunt, there's so many other like RPGs that have
Exactly.
come out recently and are coming out in the weeks and months ahead. That's like kind of
Well,
hard.
I think this also stings a little bit more for Broken Roads because because of the Fallout TV series, a lot of people have started going back to just playing Fallout games, whether it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 76. Like a lot. I mean, even like a lot of my friends like have started like going back, either going back or starting out like Fallout 76 and Fallout 3. And a few of them have started like replaying Fallout 1, go back to that. And that's and a lot of them have. It's because they watched that Fallout TV show. So like in a way, Broken Roads also had some like this against it of like kind of releasing at the same time as the Fallout TV series and it being like an unexpected success. You know, People just feel like going back to Fallout, and it's like between like, do I want to go play Fallout or Broken Roads, which is inspired by Fallout. They're gonna go to Fallout because of that TV series now. Just on top of that.
I guess if you wanted to play a more traditional Fallout game, but either you've already played 1 and 2 or they're a little bit too dated for you, which I would understand, they are quite dated. Uh, this is my random plug, Wasteland 3, probably be your best contemporary bet. It's a great game.
Wasteland 3 is great. I agree.
Well, I think we've talked about the games that we want to talk about. There have been more games that have released. I think a few of us have put some time into the No Rest for the Wicked early access. There's a few other closed betas that we talked about, but maybe we'll kind of filter those out throughout the next couple weeks. But of course, we have all the other games releasing: Sailor Blade, Sandland. One I'm sure there's another one I'm forgetting.
Megaton Musashi.
We
Granblue Patch.
can talk about like
Saga.
proper saga stuff next week. So yeah.
So yeah,
Man,
so
next week's gonna be packed.
We'll
Oh
see.
man.
We'll see.
I
Oh
feel like
man.
the next several weeks.
Chow, we've already spent 2 hours on this podcast. We're
All right,
just
so we're
now
gonna go
getting
into
to the
news.
news.
Yeah, it's a medium news slate here. A few announcements of some dates. So we'll go into this. I don't think we really have much in the way of features to shout
You
out
end the
on the
podcast right
site.
now, and we could get the under 2 hours mark again.
Yeah, just go to rpgsite.net and read the news. There you go. No, okay, we'll go through this here. We'll just not linger on any one topic too long. Looking at the features on the website that I should shout out here, it looks like James, you updated your best RPGs playable on Steam Deck. Within
Yeah,
the
and
last
then
couple
like
days.
well, yeah, I did during the shift, and then literally the next day, a couple of games got verified. It's like, well, guess I'll update it again next week.
Just give me one game they've added to the list. Just one.
So I added Visions of Mana. It's not officially showing that on Steam, but when I had the preview event, I forgot to update it previously. But when I was at the preview event, Square Enix confirmed that it's going to be verified for Steam Deck. So I
Oh,
added it.
awesome. Cool.
And it's not on there now, but it will be on Tuesday. But SMT5 Vengeance did also get confirmed for Steam Deck compatibility, which makes sense. I mean, I feel like Sega Atlus is just like kind of an assumption at this point. Like, I would be shocked if Metaphor isn't playable on Steam Deck at launch, especially considering that's a cross-gen release. So
that's pretty cool because it wasn't that long ago where Persona or Atlas games on Steam felt like a wish on a star, and now it's like, oh, not only are they on PC, but they're supporting things like the Steam Deck. Well, we'll go into news here. We'll start out with an announcement that was basically all but announced last week, but we got a basically confirmation this week, and that is that Warhorse Studio will be releasing Kingdom Come Deliverance II, slated to release this year on PC, PS5, and Xbox. and they got an announcement trailer for it, and it is a direct continuation where you still play as Henry, as our bro.
Oh yeah,
Henry never got his revenge.
That's true.
So Henry has to come back.
Yeah. So this again, I always feel like I play this role in the podcast where Adam, James, and Josh have put all the time into these games, and I like Kingdom Come Deliverance.
Hey, you're the only one who played Broken Road.
No. Wait a second. I didn't play Kingdom Come Deliverance because of not a big fan of Daniel Vavra.
Yeah, it's one of those things where this is a game made by hundreds of talented people. Unfortunately, their spokesman is a bit of a butt, but yeah. So anyone who decides not to follow Warhorse, that is a personal decision that anyone can make. We'll just leave it at that. It's a justified one. I'll put it in that sense. But I do have one small tangent for Kingdom Come. I've never played the base game, though. The announcement of this one makes me eager to. Especially since Adam has spoken. If you go back to antiquity, and by that I mean like the Tetracast of 3 years ago, I remember Adam talking about the first game. I think you eventually reviewed it, right, Adam? I'm looking at you did.
Yeah,
and you gave it basically like an average score, but you loved certain aspects of how the game was designed. And my tangent is that when I went to my very first E3, rest in peace E3, the very first game that I had a chance to preview access as like quote unquote press was Kingdom Come Deliverance. So I go to Warhorse's little booth. They sit me in front of a computer, and that game has the first person combat, which you have to really kind of learn how to play it. And here I am like, you should fight this knight. And I'm like, I have no idea how to play this game. And I absolutely sucked at it. And then like I eventually failed. And anyone who's played Kingdom Come Deliverance says like you do feel like you're crappy at the game until you like actually like progress and get better. So that was my experience with like a tiny little vertical slice in 2017 at E3 with Kingdom Come Deliverance. But well, I'll hand the microphone over to Adam, since you did review the first game. Like, how excited are you for Kingdom Come Deliverance 2?
I don't know if I want to pick it up. I guess it depends on like when it's releasing and if there's a bunch of other stuff around it. Like the original
year. So.
Yeah, I know it is this year. But the original game is interesting in like it is basically like Western RPG first person style, kind of like Elder Scrolls without the fantasy. And it's open world, or at least the first game was, but it wasn't like gigantic. It was pretty big, but it wasn't like hugely massive as you see in like a Assassin's Creed now or whatever. I know the second game is supposed to be bigger. I don't know. I'm like curious, but I'm definitely not like day one, So.
Yeah, I mean, it released in a rough state on PC.
Oh yeah, that too. The original game, I remember I had an early code because I was reviewing it, and it was very, very, very buggy. And I actually delayed my review a month because I'm like, I could probably have beaten it, but I was just like animations, the quests, and including main quests not triggering properly, so I like had to like reload sometimes. It was just very bad, and like maybe I'll just let this one cook a little bit longer.
Yeah, well, we'll see how what the release date is like. They mentioned like I watched the presentation for this new game, and I'm pretty excited because I eventually played Kingdom Come Deliverance like about 2 years ago now, and I really enjoyed my time with it, but that was also because it was all patched up already, and it took some time to get there. I do want to replay that game again, maybe May, I don't know, but it's like less of a busy time for us. I don't know if I'm gonna play the first. I mean, the sequel at launch or not. I don't know yet. But at that presentation, I really like the way that presentation was done. By the way, because it was the actor who does Henry. I think his name is Tom McKay, and then there was one who did Hans as well. Well, they were there. And like the Tom McKay, like he is pretty much inserted into Kingdom Come Deliverance, like his likeness, his appearance, and him just normally speaking, he's Henry in real life. It's like goddamn.
He's very normal dude.
Yeah, he's just normal, but he's very charming and charismatic. And he just has like that like a little bit of innocence to him, which really conveys well as Henry in that game.
Kind of
from nothing. Yeah, exactly. Kind of like a country boy almost. So he was mentioning like how much that Warhorse studio team has grown since then, since the 6 years since that game came out. Like it was initially, like, I think a team of like 11 through 15, I believe. It was under 20, and that studio is now about 250 people. It has grown massively since then, and they've all been kind of all in on developing Kingdom Come Deliverance too. So and they acknowledge, like, they're trying to make sure that like it's at the best state as it could be at release. So hopefully that translates into, it won't come in hot. It'll be at a stable state when it comes out. But they were emphasizing just like how much work and how much their scope has grown since that first game, and like all the things that they learned. They're still sticking with the CryEngine in this game. So they said they want to stick with it because they've learned so much developing the first game, and they want to translate that knowledge into the second game, which makes a lot of sense. Don't reinvent the wheel if you don't have to when it comes to that side of development. I respect that.
I feel like I haven't heard the word CryEngine in forever. I
Yeah.
that was built on
I think of
CryEngine.
my days of Ion again. Feel like I got a rant.
And they're mentioning like in the first game they had like about like 2 to 3 hours of cutscenes, and now it's like over 5 hours. And Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, and they're mentioning, like, obviously a lot of the other developers do this these days, but they say, hey, you don't necessarily have to play the first one to understand and appreciate the second one, which, take it or leave it. Who knows how much that is actually true.
Developers are very incentivized to say that.
Yeah. But obviously when you start out Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, Henry has matured and is not just just a peasant anymore. He is a full-blown knight. So instead of like the focus of like small scope like village problems like in the first one, this is like, working under a knight, as a knight under a king. So obviously the scope of like the mission design and like the scope of the story is going to be more vast in that aspect. Some of the more apparent things from the trailer is like there are firearms in the game, which that you can now use in combat. They're even working with weapon masters to make sure that like their existing melee weapons are all their animations and all that sort of stuff are like refined and retuned to be more accurate for that medieval simulation experience and immersion. And just, they didn't say too much about like exactly what are all the new changes. Just sort of gave you like a brief first look gameplay trailer or in-engine look for this sequel. Personally, I really do like Kingdom Come Deliverance 1 a lot. When it comes to like just it is one of those games that you grow to love the more you play it. Adam and I have been spoke about Kingdom Come Deliverance I don't know how many podcast episodes ago, but we were talking about like, it is intentionally you feel like shit at the very beginning of the game. You
I
feel like
remember
you
you
can't
guys
do
talked about
anything.
it.
Yeah, you feel
Like
like
the
you're a
one thing,
complete buffoon. You just feel like you can't do anything right.
yeah, the one thing I remember you guys talking about it was like how your main character could not read until you like build up your intelligence of something, and you're like, then the text will become clear, then you can actually like read it or something. I remember you said something like that in the podcast.
Yeah.
Actually,
So
do not remember this. Like, it sort of rings a bell, but like, is that true? I don't remember.
I don't
But
know.
I do remember that, like, yeah, like early on, you have to like, you can only your pickpocketing skill sucks, so you can only steal from like sleeping people. You can't fight anything worth shit. Like, I'm gonna take on that town knight or that town guard. He's just kind of a pushover, right? Nope, he's gonna beat you because you suck. And yeah, you just suck.
Yeah.
So you have to go really slow early on. Get some stats.
But yeah, Kingdom Come Deliverance is definitely one of those games that like if you really are looking for that like I don't know if it's like how historically accurate it is, but it makes you feel like you're kind of living in those medieval times, working your way from the ground up. You feel like you're just incompetent at everything, and you really have to earn your way up the social ladder.
And also, I remember one of the things I mentioned in my review. This was the studio's first game. Some of the cinematics and voice acting, like English voice acting in the game, was honestly like pretty impressive considering this is like a debut project.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see how that'll turn out in the sequel.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm looking forward to this to the sequel. I'm hoping it releases it at a stable rate or a stable state. I don't know what to really expect yet because they haven't really said too much. But it's cool to see them remain committed to this world and like this because you don't really see like much like high budget like medieval like first person medieval ties like without like any hint of fantasy. It's like very very grounded. It's not like you're like killing dragons or something. So yeah, it's gonna be cool to see. I'm happy for them.
Also, this week we had the Nintendo Indie World event that they held on the 17th, a few days ago at time of recording. So I know Josh watched that, and the one thing that we saw that kind of was in our wheelhouse was the announcement of SteamWorld Heist 2 will be releasing on August 8th for basically all consoles and PC. And you had played the first SteamWorld Heist, right?
Yeah, yeah. I really liked the first SteamWorld Heist. It was a really cool side scroller turn based RPG where you have this crew of like four Steam bots, all have different like capabilities, almost like a class type. And a lot of the game was positioning, like taking behind cover, and like since enemies were constantly behind cover, one of like the central mechanics of that game is like you have to actually ricochet your bullets off of walls to find their like target. So you also have a lot of like the game was like kind of almost like trigonometry of like okay, how am I gonna angle my shot so it bounces off this wall in a certain way to bounce off of that wall, so when it bounces off of that wall it'll hit the enemy at a certain rate, or hit like an environmental object that'll explode and it'll hit them, sort of deal.
So
And
the fact that you started out with that, I'm like, why are you starting out with this ricochet mechanic? Is that important? And then in the press release, it's literally like the first headline is aim for ricochet mastery. Like, oh, I guess it's a fundamental part of the game is mastering the
yeah,
ricochet.
yeah, and it was such a cool game at that time. Like the SteamWorld series of games, like are just really they're reliably like good in my opinion. Like I'm not gonna say that all of them like are like amazing. I didn't try out that new city building sim yet that released later last year. But like when it comes to like the SteamWorld Dig games, the SteamWorld Quest, and the SteamWorld Heist, like all of those games, I had a good time with. Like they were awesome. So seeing them like do a follow up to SteamWorld Heist is pretty exciting for me because that is definitely the SteamWorld game that like I would rank. Not I don't know if it's my favorite, but it's definitely up there. Um, and they're also adding in like it's like a pirate themed game now where you have like your own ship and that there's this overworld map that you can use to travel around and like enter real time combat with other enemy ships. And I'm like, that's awesome. I'm there day one. I can't wait to play this game. They made the case with SteamWorld Heist, and I'm like, all right, I'm down for more. Actually, I'm really excited to see like what they've done to like improve the formula in creative ways.
Always been interested in the SteamWorld games, but I've never gotten around to playing any of them. I
Yeah,
hear a lot of them are really good. I've heard good things about like SteamWorld Dig 2,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
obviously not an RPG.
yeah.
So
Definitely one of the one that like everyone praises. Good reason. Really, really solid platformer.
And this last one is not an announcement. This game has previously been announced, but we've got a new trailer for it and learned that it's releasing later this year worldwide. This is Yasha: Legends of the Demon Blade. This is a action roguelike RPG, kind of in the vein of Hades, like with that isometric action, isometric point of view action combat. Three playable characters with different kits. Releasing for all consoles and PC later this year. So I'm actually not sure. I was trying to look up when this game was first announced. It's being developed by Seven Quark, which is a Taiwanese developer, and we got a little bit about how the combat works, about how progression works, um, upgrade items, including like a meal system, ingredients for recipes, things like that. So it has a lot of kind of the trimmings of it's framed like a roguelike, but has some like progression systems that are framed more like an RPG. So hence action RPG roguelike.
Yeah, so this has been featured here and there at like the indie game, like those big indie game showcases, I believe. Like this is the first time I've seen this game, but I didn't know much
Mhm.
about it. But I mean, like the screenshots kind of speak for themselves. Like this game looks really, really fucking good. It looks like almost like a painting, in still screenshots. So I'm really interested to
As
see how
someone
it
who's
shapes
never
up.
played Hades, I'm like, it looks kind of like Hades, but I haven't played Hades. Maybe that's a surface level
Uh,
thing.
yeah, I don't know if it'll play like if it'll be exactly like Hades, like, but it definitely has that isometric action RPG thing going for it, and see damage numbers, and you'll have the
Mhm.
different ability, different weapons, different skills, and all that sort of stuff. So Hades didn't invent that for me, but
Yeah,
it does.
correct.
But I can see why people would think, oh, this looks like Hades. Yeah, it does have that isometric action RPG element to it.
We have some updates for some previously announced things. Maybe James can talk to us a little bit about this, but ahead of the June/July release for Final Fantasy XIV Dawntrail, one of the big upgrades to Final Fantasy XIV this year is the upgraded graphics engine, and they've got a new benchmark tool to help prepare players for that. Is there a lot of interesting information to pull out of this benchmark, or did you try it yourself, James, or Charlie?
Yeah, I tried it myself. No surprise, I'm running just fine. People have gotten it running on Steam Deck, running just fine. So pretty good news all around. Except a lot of people are going absolutely insane about some of the changes to how characters look,
I
and
was
it
gonna
has
bring that
been
up. Is that
it has
yeah?
been very entertaining to watch because some of them legitimate complaints. Others are like, the curvature of the eye is just so slightly different. I swear to God, I look at the two images and it's like it's the same thing. The curvature of the lip is just ever so slightly different.
It's the
It's the
same
same
texture.
thing. It's like, oh my God. And a lot of these people, I'm just gonna be blunt. If you're playing the game on console, then whatever. But if you're playing on PC and I know you've been using mods and you're basically figuratively going to just stuff your character full of Botox, shut up. Please shut
But
up.
just for context for those of us that aren't playing Final Fantasy 14, this is not a typical thing. This is like the first major maybe second major graphics overhaul. This isn't something that's
First major graphics update, yeah. And they've even
guys.
said it's the first one. They're gonna keep doing it over time. So we're probably gonna have this song dance again for the next expansion after this, because that's probably gonna be the one that drops PlayStation 4 support. So they can really go ham.
You brought up where I was gonna go. Like they've done incremental updates before, because it wasn't it like Stormblood where they dropped PS3 and now they're gonna drop
Yeah, but
PS4.
that wasn't an update to the base level graphics per se. It just meant that for the zones they could have a higher level of detail and whatnot
Right.
because they didn't have to run on the PS3, but it wasn't an inherent like upgrade to the core systems for the graphics and whatnot.
That makes
But
sense.
yeah, not much else to say here. I mean, the benchmark is out there. If you play
I
on
guess just
PC,
the
like,
last follow up is like Yoshi P has stated like he's heard like the complaints of like people who do have issue of like how the new lighting engine is affecting the way their characters look, and he's saying the development team is already well aware and like they're working on it. It's just like one of those things like, hey, there's a pre-release
yeah,
like build of like that new engine. It's like it'll be different in the final
yeah.
game.
And then, of course, this kind of goes without saying, and it's not a surprise to anyone, even people like me who don't play the game. But clearly, the fact that they're investing in their back end shows that they're planning to support this game for a much long time to come. Here's kind of an interesting follow up. We already knew the date of the second DLC for Fate Samurai Remnant, but we talked about how the way it was delivered was deliberately obscured, like even like tongue in cheek, like we're not telling you the title, he. But we got that information now. The date for the second DLC. Oh, I guess it's already out. Time of recording. So this was written on the 15th. We're recording this on the 20th. The second DLC came out on the 18th, and it is Yagyu Sword Chronicles. So I guess I'll ask the people who have played Fate Samurai Remnant: have either of you tried out the second DLC yet?
No, I haven't had time to do it. I've
No.
been playing Eiyuden
We've
a
been
lot,
both in
so.
Aiden.
Yeah.
All
So,
right.
but the thing that was funny about this is like when you said like when you previously mentioned this, like they purposely like kind of scribbled out the Yagyu part of the name when they first called it just Blank Sword Chronicles. I'm like, okay, why did they do that? So they unveiled like the new servant who shows up in this is Yagyu Munenori, who has shown up in Fate Grand Order, but as like a much older version of him. So in this one, you play with a much younger version of Yagyu Munenori in it, and so you'll team up with him. You get to play him in this DLC. One of the screenshots shows you're fighting him as well. So yeah, I don't know too much about like what the DLC story is. I just know that they brought in like this. I don't know how popular he is. Honestly, like he does like play a certain significant role in like one of the story arcs in that game, but I don't know how popular he is. He's definitely like one of like the few grandpa designs in that game, which makes him
But
memorable.
is this like as someone who only knows a tiny bit about Fate, like is this something that's worthy of the way they presented it? Like, oh my god, it's Yagyu. Not
I don't
really.
know, maybe. I have no idea.
Just
I'm
the
like,
fact
that's
that
cool. Yeah. I mean, that's
they
cool.
obscured the name, like, is this like a
Yeah.
bomb drop or not really?
I
Okay.
don't
Well, I mean,
know. I guess for
they're
some
being
people
fun.
it'll be. Yeah. I guess it'll be,
Alright.
I guess it is for some people, right? Like, because definitely for some people, any one of those characters in Fate Go is someone's favorite. So, for the people who like Yagyu a lot, they're like, "Holy fucking shit, we're getting this character that I like a lot." And it's like a new version of him because we see him much younger now. So for some people, they're like, "Holy shit," because um, like it's one of those. I'm glad that Kite provided historical context for this. So, Fate Samurai Remnant takes place in the year 1651, and Munenori historically died a few years before in 1646. So this allows him to be summoned into the game as his heroic spirit, and just like Musashi, which is effectively his Iori's adoptive parent and teacher. So for historical nerds, especially Japanese historical nerds, you can like kind of see like an alternate history take of like how this very famous figure in Japanese history, how they would interact with other people around that time frame, even though historically they were already dead. That's another aspect to it.
And this is the second of 3 planned DLCs, and um, I presume one of you might play this coming forward, but we understand that it's a very busy time of year. Uh, so
Yeah,
maybe we'll wait
I
till the
mean,
third DLC comes out. And,
it's not letting up. So maybe when all three DLCs are out, I'll have time to like
yeah,
go through all of them.
let them out.
But look, man, I have this. So like right now, the just behind the scenes thing is like we're still waiting for Stanland review code because I signed up to review that. We don't know if that's gonna come in. I am also interested in like checking out goddamn near everything, right? So I already have Saga Emerald Beyond pre-ordered. It was $10 off of Green Man Gaming, so I was like, okay, sure. So I have that already ready
Well,
to go.
wait a second. Oh no, it was more than 10% off. Oh wait, you said $10 off. Never mind.
Yeah, said that.
Okay, we're good. Sorry.
So
looking out for you in your wallet.
yeah. So that's already good. So I'm interested, obviously, getting to that. Gonna get the Sandland if that comes in. And of course, Megaton Musashi is at my fucking field because it's giant robots and you can a lot of customization in that. And I've always wanted to play Megaton Musashi, but it just never got localized. So I want to play that. So that's already 3 games. Then I was like, Stellar Blade was a pretty cool demo. I'll somehow get around to that. And then I think there's like one other thing besides Eiyuden that I'm already done with. So, it is what it is.
It's just the year of RPGs. Like it's never stopping. It's never stopping. Like even May, there's ever stuff that's like we got like like review code requests have opened up for like this one indie like dungeon RPG that I checked out in like December, and it's like I'd love to check that out, but it's like, will I have the time with all like everything? It's it's too much.
Mm-hmm.
And this last one is pretty interesting, and I try to do some research on this to get some of the details so I don't have to rely on Adam and Josh so much. And that is that the Japanese corporation Gmode, which specializes in publishing Japanese mobile phone games, primarily from like the 2000s era, is releasing under their Gmode's archive label a port for Switch and PC of a Persona 3 spin-off that has never made its way outside of Japan called Persona 3 Aegis: The First Mission.
Mhm.
So back in 2000, 2001, Gmode started releasing Gmode archives, ports of these mobile phone games from the 2000s to Switch and then later to PC. Most of these are still Japanese only, but this is kind of neat because kind of like before Crisis for Final Fantasy VII, this was like one of those 2000s era phone games that we didn't have the iPhone yet. We were never had a chance in heck of ever seeing it playable, whether it's localized officially or not, here in the West, unless you found a way to emulate it on your PC. But this will be a first way to play, a convenient way to play this Persona 3 Aegis spinoff that I didn't even know existed, that originally came out in 2007. Uh, so this is, I don't know, kind of pretty interesting, that'll be coming out for Switch and PC. I don't know if they gave a time frame for this. It was part of a larger presentation. It wasn't it was part of a longer live stream that we just kind of snipped out of there rather
Yeah, I
than
mean,
being an
yeah,
independent announcement.
yeah, they've been doing this like last August. The Gmode also brought over the the phone version of like the original Persona 1 game.
Mhm.
It was like I think it was like I don't know if it was a spin-off, but it was part of this initiative as well. They've been gradually doing this, and I think it's really valuable work, honestly, because
Yeah.
getting and archiving those pre-iOS, pre-Android era flip phone games, it's like that's basically like lost media if this initiative wasn't being undertaken. It's like when we were talking about the East release on Switch a
Yeah.
few podcast episodes back. Like these games are if this work wasn't happening, no one would be able to really fucking play them. Um,
Mm.
regardless of whether you understand the language or not, it's important work just now to just like make sure that these are accessible. Hopefully now and forever moving forward. And like maybe down the line, there'll be official or fan efforts to like maybe um get some sort of translation effort on them. But the important piece of the puzzle first is making them sold officially in some way, shape, or form for people. So I think this is really fucking cool. I've heard of this game. I've never played it, obviously. I didn't have like a Japanese mobile phone or anything to play it. But I
And
think this
there's
is really
about
awesome.
I'm clicking through like this upload from Gmode PR is like 2
Yeah.
hours long, 2 hours 20
Uh-huh.
minutes
You
long.
could watch some gameplay clips around like the hour and 25-minute mark. It's
Yeah,
kind of like
it's like 10 minutes of footage or maybe like 8 minutes of footage. It's a decent amount, so it's kind of fun looking.
Yeah. So this is really cool. I hope they continue to like just do this and hopefully nothing really gets in their way to stop
Mhm.
them doing this. This is so
Yeah,
it's
and
so
there was
cool.
no
It's so cool.
Mo and most of the Gmode archives do not get official, English localizations. It looks like a couple of them have, but the other Persona one, the Persona 1 mobile port hasn't, so it's not likely that this will be, but it'll still be, hopefully playable for those that don't mind the language barrier. But yeah,
Yeah.
just like Josh said, just really cool just to have it just for, like, preservation's sake and just, not become lost media that no one has any access to at all.
I was trying to think. Does anyone remember what Index used to do before they took over Atlus back in the day? I remember they used to make like crappy like phone and PC games of some sort, and
I
somehow
I
they
I,
had like
I don't recall
more
too much.
revenue than Atlus, and
Yeah.
were able to buy it. Then later on, they went bankrupt because it was like all fraud
Yeah.
or something.
It's not
I
a
do not
great
know.
period. Yeah. It's well, Atlas is in a better spot these days. So Atlas coming to Sega was like kind of the best case scenario for them.
With that, we'll go into kind of like our date rundown, some wrap ups. Well, this first one's actually kind of more of an announcement. It was like a shadow drop during the Nintendo Indie Presents stream.
Only the Japanese stream, too.
Okay.
Yeah,
Only the.
It was weird what some games were only on the Japanese stream and which ones were like on the Western one. There was some really interesting stuff in the Japanese one, yeah.
In general, it's weird because sometimes it shows up on the Japanese one, and I can't think of a specific example right now, but I know that sometimes we see something that shows up only on the Japanese stream, and then we learn like 2 hours later that it's also coming to the West, but it was just not put in the Western presentation.
Oh, the new thing from Furyu with Yoko Shimomura and Nojima.
Reinatus.
Yeah, the fake 13 or the real versus 13.
Yeah, I remember that was only on the Japanese direct, and then
it's like it was practically confirmed for localization on the website, even though it wasn't announced. It was fun.
Very weird. Yeah.
But then this one, I guess, also we have listed as a worldwide release. So to stop bearing the lead, this is from a South Korean solo developer that goes by Ooze, releasing a game called Sagres, Sagres.
I have no idea how to pronounce Sagres or Sagres. I have no idea, to be honest. And I'm sorry to anyone listening. I have no clue. I've been calling it Sagres. It could be Sagres. It could be Sagres. I have no clue.
Yeah, and just a heads up, since I've literally not seen anyone else talk about this, and I just double checked. So this is coming out on Switch. It's been out on PC since September.
Yeah, so I saw that later that it was on Steam last September, it's gotten like fairly positive reviews there too.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's usually a safe assumption that literally anything, unless they explicitly say, "Oh yeah, this is a Switch exclusive," and even then, it's like indie games pretty much by default just end up on PC.
I decided to do the news story on this because I was like, you know what, I want to like give this game coverage to like give people the heads up, like, hey, there's a solo developer out of South Korea doing their best out there, and I think it'd be cool for more people to know about it. And it seemed like from like social media response, like, hey, I should probably go check this out. It looks really cool. I'm like that. It feels a little good doing that,
Kind of like when we talked about Felvedek a few weeks back. It sounds like Paige might want to do a review for that since she finished it.
Yeah, I was like, go ahead if you want to do it, go do it. That's crazy. That's awesome. So
I was going to try to describe this game slightly. It's kind of difficult. It has an art style that to me looks very like GBA Advance Wars ish, and it's a nautical pirate themed game where you have like a world map and you kind of like have kind of like storybook encounters across the world map and some like basic combat where you have kind of like almost like a slight deck building aspect to it, where you kind of build out a kit that you try to counteract what the enemy's throwing at you.
It's almost like Alex Kidd rock paper scissors style. Type deal. I guess the easiest way for people who are really have big brain rot, it's kind of like Fate Extra battle system with the rock paper scissors, and I'd have to unveil what the rock paper scissors are to like an enemy's list of actions, and then properly counteract it with the appropriate action on your end, which is like Fate Extra. And I as for the comparison, I think even though it's fundamentally like presented in a different way, it's sort of like Uncharted Waters, but like at an indie level, more small scope level.
I like how it's literally you're not using rock paper scissors as like a point of comparison. Literally, it shows him building his deck, and it's like paper crumpler beats rock, deals 2x damage, things like that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And Sagres was shadow dropped on Switch during the indie announcement, and then is also available on PC.
So well, hopefully, if you whether it's on Steam or PC, or whether it's on Steam or Switch, if this kind of game kind of speaks to you, definitely go support this kind of game.
Yeah, there's a demo on Steam too. I'm not sure if the demo is also on Switch, but just looking at the game, if you have literally any PC from the last 6-7 years, it should run it. It should run it.
So this is the developed by South Korean solo developer Ooze, as Brian mentioned, also published by Kakehashi Game.
All right, going through the rest of the dates for the upcoming months. At the time of recording, we don't know the outcome of this. By the time you're listening to this, you might already know the outcome. On April 22nd, we will have an Atlus Presents talking about the upcoming Metaphor ReFantazio. We don't know if this is a release date. New trailer obviously seems likely, but we don't know what's going to be announced here, other than it's going to be latest updates of development of the game. You might already know what it is. We'll, of course, be reporting on it formally on next week's episode of the podcast.
Yeah, I believe they're saying it's like a 30-minute presentation of it, is what I'm hearing. So it's whatever it is, it's going to be lengthy and beefy, all just for this game. You know what? Best case scenario, most likely best case scenario, they give us a release date. My unrealistic hope and dream, it's a release date and a demo right there and then.
Shadow drop
that demo.
But yeah, so that'll be on April 22nd, 3 p.m. West Coast Pacific time. And obviously, by the time, since this podcast isn't going to go up till the 21st, if you're listening to this, you might already know the outcome. We don't. You have us at a disadvantage, but we'll report on it next week. It'll be on the website.
Okay, since we're here, what do you hope to see there?
I hope it's a release date just to help for planning purposes. Just to
yeah. It's
just like
I just want to know.
Yeah, it's like I don't think there is a single month so far that doesn't have at least one major RPG in it. It's kind of insane. Like, well, maybe nothing for August, but I'm half expecting Visions of Mana is going to be there.
I'm thinking. I'm thinking. I'm thinking of September.
Oh, Black Myth Wukong is August. You're right. Never mind.
I'm thinking September for this game. You think it's getting delayed?
September's...
It's going to release the same date as Kai no Kiseki, just to make James mad.
There you go.
Then he has to binge Crow too.
Well. Here, yeah, I do need to get to Crow too. That's the real reason why I said I'm not sure if I can get through. I can, but it's okay. I'll just request the Kai no Kiseki, and hopefully they'll actually send it early. Hopefully, please.
But yeah, so we'll see. I'm excited.
The next day, we're going to get a console port for Hammerwatch 2. It'll be releasing on Xbox Series and PlayStation 4 on April 23rd.
This one I need to remind myself. Like, it already came out on PS5, but now it's coming out on PS4 or something like that.
Yeah.
It already came out on PC, and then it came out it's
this one's very weird because I had to actually do a correction for this because the last time we reported on this, they mentioned that it was coming to PlayStation 4, Xbox Series, and Xbox One. They explicitly mentioned that. Then when they put out this console release date in the press release, they only mentioned Xbox Series X and S and PlayStation 4. So I'm like, okay, did they drop support for Xbox One? They didn't mention it at all this press release. So, and then one response we got on Twitter was like, hey, they're saying this is still playable on Xbox One on the Xbox Store page. I'm like, okay, that's really weird. So I just made a note. They didn't mention it on the press release, but the Xbox Store page for Hammerwatch 2 still lists that'll be playable on Xbox One. So
and we have no idea if that's an oversight. The page isn't updated.
Actually, I thought I checked.
Well, no.
I thought they removed it.
Let me check right now if it's still there, because to be clear, the way the Xbox Store works.
Okay, it was there, but I checked it a few days ago, and now
correction to the correction.
Not there.
There you go.
Okay.
Well, actually, correction to the correction is just that the initial thing was correct.
One second. I'm loading the Xbox. Yeah, it says only Xbox Series XS. Yeah.
If you didn't follow that, it is out already on PC and PS5 and Switch. By next week, it'll be out on Xbox Series and PlayStation 4.
Okay, this is especially weird because it says optimized for Xbox Series X and S, and it's like, okay, so you don't usually have that unless it's a game that's cross-gen that has a Series X and S version in addition. It's like, that, why? What's wrong with them?
Yeah, this is really weird because, when I first checked that, I was like, oh yeah, this does say it's playable on Xbox One. So now, look, you find out for people who are getting Hammerwatch 2 on Xbox. You find out for us, okay? You tell us.
Okay. So Hammerwatch 2, the Chronicles edition, which comes with Hammerwatch 1 as well, lists it as being playable on both Xbox One and Xbox Series X and S. and says it as smart delivery, which means that it gives you the best version. And wait a second, if you go to the individual pages for both Hammerwatch 1 and Hammerwatch 2, it just says Series X and S, but the bundle says this on Xbox One as well, and it has smart delivery, which means it would have to be... What is wrong with them?
So yeah, this Xbox players do let us know, okay? We don't know.
You know what? I'm gonna check the Xbox store right now on my Xbox, see what it says. 1 second.
James is like invested in this.
Yeah.
He's like,
he's
gonna get to the bottom of it.
Let's go to the next news story while he's investigating it. Real time, we're breaking news as he's checking it.
All right. As we were talking about that, I was watching the trailer. It looks fun. I don't know. Anyway, next news story. Last one for April. We're gonna get the next update for Granblue Fantasy Relink, version 1.2. It's gonna add. Pardon me, Chow, if I mispronounced these.
Well, he doesn't care if you mispronounce the English names.
Forget about the English names.
Okay. Well, their English names are
Song and
Seofon
Siete.
and Tweyen.
Song and Siete all day.
Yeah, so for people who don't, let's clear this up for audio listeners. So the English names for these characters are Seofon and Tweyen, sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. That's just how it looks to me. So Tweyen. And then their Japanese names, which the Granblue community refers to them as for the most part, is Siete for Seofon and Song for Tweyen, because those are kind of easier to say.
I feel like it's a localization thing that they changed and they thought it may be better, and then in the long run it turns out it had like negative consequences because a lot of people don't seem to like the English names as much. But localization changes, it's like kind of like permanent. You don't want to like change it. It's like Ash Ketchum. They're not going to change his name.
It's like Burning Gundam and God Gundam.
Yeah, it's like it's already stick onto it. It's like they're not going to change it.
Yeah. So they gave a date for this their version 1.2 that adds these characters for free on April 26th. They'll have a Granblue Showcase Relink Part 3 stream program on April 25th that'll detail more about what's in that update, because on the image for that, they also said that they're bringing along character adjustments and new features to this version.
You didn't hear it from me, but people data mine there's even a harder Lucilius fight.
So yeah, so probably that's one of it, and it's like, okay. Well,
I feel like they're scrambling to make content with this.
It makes sense because like you got like all these upgrades, new stuff coming from Lucilius already, and then people are like, okay, what am I going to use this on? Okay, go use it.
Breaking news. Breaking news.
Here we go. Back to the Hammerwatch story. Briefly.
Even the actual Xbox Store app on the Xbox itself is inconsistent. The bundle says Xbox Series X and S and Xbox One and says that there's smart delivery, but the individual pages for both Hammerwatch 2 and Hammerwatch Anniversary Edition only state Xbox Series X and S. Well, so it's literally, we won't know until somebody buys it and tries to play it on an Xbox One.
That's
who's got an Xbox One?
I do.
James is like, I do.
People out there think James hates Xbox, and he's like the only one of the series.
He's the biggest Xbox lover. Okay. I'll be honest with.
I'm not a huge Xbox fan. I just there was a reason why I wanted to avoid, like, okay, so here was the reasoning for why I got the Series X. One, there's 360 and original Xbox game. Yeah, there's original Xbox and 360 games that I would like to play that probably won't ever be emulated well. Like the Gladius was a tactical RPG I loved as a kid. I played the GameCube version. You can get it at 4K 60 on Xbox One X Series X. I had a One X for a while. And the only reason, the reason I had that was for the backwards compatibility and also for multi-platform games that even a few years back, it wasn't guaranteed that multiplats would always come out on PC. So I was like, okay, if I have to get it on console, I'd rather like the best version I can. So that's why I had that. And I had a follower on Twitter that said that they were selling their Series X for $400 in like 2021. Because they were upgrading to the Halo limited edition. And at the time, I was able to trade in my One X for like $325 bucks at GameStop, and in California they have to give you the same amount of money in like cash as store credit. So I basically traded in, and then I got the Series X for $400. So it was like an upgrade for $75. And at that point, it's like, why wouldn't I? It's
Well, all I'm hearing is that you hate Xbox.
Rip.
Yep.
Okay, I have a very pleasant experience during the 360 era. It was way better than the PS3 for me, but I think they dropped the ball hard when they made the Xbox One era. It was just
Okay, this is not the fucking. Let's fucking talk about how we feel about the Xbox hour. We're just saying that's the
hey, that's how it is. Okay, somebody needs to give me a Panzer Dragoon Orta on PC, please.
Okay.
Well, wait a second, Chow. I'm pretty sure that is backwards compatible. You can, if you get
I know you get like a 4K version if you play on the Xbox One and whatever. But I don't have an Xbox, and I'm not going to spend all that money just to play a backwards capable port.
Well, Chow, I'm sure you could get a used Xbox One for like not
for like
much at all.
$1.
Look, if you go shop in Japan, you could buy a Wii U used for like $10. Okay.
Why would I want to buy a Wii U?
Yeah, but I'm just saying it's like $10 in the used market.
Blade X Machine.
Better on Semu.
So that's the story between the collaboration between Hammerwatch 2 and Granblue Fantasy Relink.
We get more unhinged the further closer to the 3-hour mark we get. Anyways, there are 4 more headlines. We'll get to them eventually. All right, into June date. Only one June date. We have a worldwide release date for Mushoku Tensei Jobless Reincarnation Quest of Memories. That is a mouthful. It is the rare game title that has both a colon and a hyphen. Mushoku Tensei Jobless Reincarnation Quest of Memories will be releasing worldwide on Switch, PlayStation 4, 5, PC.
Now this one is sort of interesting because this is from Bushiroad, who they released the Goblin Slayer game earlier this year, and that one, it originally said on, there was like an English website, and like the PC page for it said it was going to support English, and then it didn't. And I don't.
Yeah, they were like a few days before it came out on Steam. It's like, by the way, we're not supporting English at all.
So is this one actually releasing worldwide? Like the Goblin Slayer website is in English. Like it from all like from this viewpoint, it looked like it was going to release in English and it didn't. So now I'm wondering, like, is this actually releasing in English?
Yeah, they kind of dug themselves the Goblin Slayer one. So I don't know actually. Regardless of like, I'm hearing the game's not even good, but that's besides the point. Who knows? They're saying as of right now, it's releasing in English worldwide. Come launch day June 20th. We'll see what we have to say, I guess. Stay tuned.
Look, if I was an actual video game guy, I would buy this for the figure, not the game.
Are you not?
Because I don't know. I just have a very mixed experience with Bushiroad. Okay, they're like not high enough budget to make a decent game, in my opinion.
Dang. All right, so are you gonna get this for the Nendroid figurine thing then that's coming with this?
That's a very steep price. It's like 10,000 yen.
You played that Rune Factory, right?
Yeah. It was like kind of like their version, their answer to Silent Hope.
Was it any good?
Probably 6. It's like it got some interesting ideas, but
anyways, like this is like Bushiroad's like attempt to do more console stuff. They had that game, they had the Goblin Slayer game, they have this Mushoku Tensei game, they have a Hunter x Hunter game coming.
Oh yeah, oh god, that's right.
So
I forgot that
a bunch of these anime licensed
stuff.
So
yeah, they're publishing the Hunter x Hunter fighting game. It's developed by Eiyuden, who developed the DNF Duel Ultimate Marvel. I don't know. Hopefully I think we're going to see first footage of that actually next weekend at EVO Japan. So
and I remember they showed like a small little clip from that game, and it seemed like everyone. It's just so funny how everyone had the same response. Like, yeah, GameCube era fighting games are back. It looks like a GameCube era fighting game.
It does. It definitely like I thought it was like a mobile game, but
specifically GameCube, not PlayStation 2, not Xbox or Dreamcast or anything else. Like GameCube specifically.
GameCube kind of like owned that like 3D cell shading style of like look. It's like, yeah, that does look like GameCube. You're right. So, hopefully that looks cool. We'll see at Evo Japan next weekend. Hopefully there'll be good things people say about it. I'm not optimistic. We'll see. As for the Mushoku Tensei, I actually do watch the Mushoku Tensei anime. I do enjoy it. Like I know there's a lot of people who have strong feelings about it. I know there's a
main
lot of
character is
strong
a
feelings
pervert
about
or
it.
something. Is that the
He's
story?
He's a 40-year-old in a 10-year-old body.
Yeah, he's not a great person starting out. Like let's keep it at that. He grows over time. He does become a pretty good character, but he has a rough start.
Yeah, a lot of people can't seem to get past like the first few episodes because they just can't stand this protagonist.
I mean,
But if you can get over it, there's actually a
yeah.
decent story in here.
Yeah, I personally enjoy it a lot. As for this game, I don't know. We'll see. Them going to a dungeon crawler route with this game it's not what I would like.
I feel like that's a missed opportunity.
To me it's like a weird match for this type of show or series in general. Like I thought they would go like an action RPG route.
Yeah, because the character has some very cool abilities in the actual show, and you're like, now it's in the turn-based RPGs. Like they don't really get to see all their like I don't know their skills to put to light. If you get what I mean.
Also, the other Bushiro project I was like trying to remember was I think they're publishing the Review Starlight visual novel coming out in August, and I believe that's also slated for simultaneous worldwide release and also supports English as well, along with, I believe, Chinese. So I'm hoping that's good too, because I really like
it's a visual novel. How can you mess that up?
Not having a great English script. That's how, or maybe just not having a good visual novel. I don't know. So I'm hoping that's good. I don't know if I would pick once again. I don't know if I'd pick visual novel for the Review Starlight series. I would think it'd be like an action game with some visual novel elements.
You know what I discovered? I think there's some guy that posted a Twitter feed about your visual novel taste. Apparently, because I like Phoenix Wright and White Album 2, I'm considered a motherfucking elitist.
Wait, people who like Phoenix Wright are elitists?
apparently, people with those tastes in visual novels is considered elitist.
I thought White Album 2 was considered by many in that sphere to be one of the best ones.
Yeah, a lot of people really hold White Album 2 as like one of the most beloved visual novels to them.
Yeah, apparently, if you have those tastes, you're elitist.
Yeah, but fuck you, Chap. That's really funny. Ace Attorney and White Album 2.
Well, the thing is it's very obviously bait. It's meant to be like it's been going around. Like there was one for like rhythm games a few months back, and then there was one for like anime manga, and it's like a trend of people that are way too online about their taste for a medium and basically deliberately going out of their way to make a chart that is like designed in a lab to make as many people angry as possible. So
I don't keep up with what the kids are doing these days online, man. That's but
to be clear, it's not,
that's funny.
Yeah, to be clear, I haven't been paying close attention to it. I just ran into the rhythm game one, and then I was told there was also one for anime and manga when I saw the VN one. So it's like, oh, okay, this is just a trend.
Okay, well, all right.
We talked a little bit about this game last week on the podcast with our new Kingdoms update, but also Darkest Dungeon 2 will be releasing on PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 on July 15th.
Yeah.
I'm sort of surprised. I'm not sure why they just didn't announce this last week when they did the Kingdoms update.
Yep. Well, now it's got mentioned on the Tetracast 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah, you gotta stay relevant. Always. Yep.
200
IQ. The huge marketing.
The Idea Factory International approach.
But obviously, for players of the first game who played on console, very cool for them to have access to that game. Speaking of, kind of similar, One Piece Odyssey, obviously released last year in January on PC, PC, PlayStation, and Xbox, will be releasing this year on the Switch on July 26th.
Bandai Namco does this a lot, where they'll release like the Switch version of one of their games just like a year or two later.
They did this for Kakarot, right?
They did this for Kakarot. They did this for like Ni no Kuni 2. They did this for What else? Some of one of the Sword Art Online games.
Oh
Did
yeah.
did that dot hack game ever come to Switch? Did I make that up? I think.
Oh yeah, they did that.
Yeah, so
Genius
there's
collection.
so yeah, they have a lot of these games that come out to Switch afterwards. So I guess this is another one.
This One Piece Odyssey port will have the Reunion Memories DLC, story DLC, bundled in. That's like the new story DLC that comes out that is unlocked after you beat the campaign, I believe.
And it's the one that just goes cliff notes on a bunch of different sagas, I think.
Something like
Because
that.
it's memories of different One Piece events.
That's for a One Piece person to know. That's not me.
Gotcha.
That's for Paige, who said you need to have 400 episodes of One Piece minimum under your belt to understand Odyssey, which is fantastic. Great.
I mean, another game we talked about last week, they got another update this week. Cat Quest 3 will be releasing on August 8th. So last week we got the animated intro, and then this week we got the release date review.
Marketing.
Are you gonna play this with your girlfriend, Brian?
Probably. We got the first one enough.
Celebrate
And it's
international.
just very casual, fun. Yep, there you go. And a demo is available on the eShop if you're playing it on Switch. And that covers us for this podcast. So the 2-hour dream was 2. We couldn't hold on to that for.
Yeah, I mean, some people just have to be like, "Oh, let me get my Xbox. Oh, let me tell you how I feel about Xbox." You know, just all on them.
God.
The hour 40 minutes talking about Eiyuden and me talking about 25 minutes on Broken Roads. Clearly not to blame. It's Xbox's fault. But yeah, obviously a lot of games releasing in the next week. A lot of games. So we will have plenty to talk about next week. I don't know what's going to be the headliner, but we have obviously I've already listed them. They're all coming out. I'm going to continue to play Eiyuden. We've got Saga, Stellar Blade, all the other ones I'm forgetting, but busy time of year, and we're going to be playing those into May and into June, and we'll have plenty to discuss for the next several weeks of episodes. All the news that we talked about from the Nintendo Indie Showcase and everything else is up on the website at rpgsite.net. By the time you listen to this, hopefully that will include a review of Eiyuden Chronicle 100 Heroes. You can find RPG Site on all the social media platforms: YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Just search for RPG Site and you should be able to find us. Join our Discord, discord.gg/RPG Site. If you like this episode, on whatever podcast service you listen to us, give us a like, give us a rating, put a comment on the news page if you like. We like seeing those. And we'll be back next week with another episode of the Tetracast. Until you hear from us then, stay safe, take care, and we'll talk to y'all later.
If you like any of the new games that come out this week, you're an elitist.